O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée de plus brillant exploit. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Joel. As always, well done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Members of Council, if I can have a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Mover and seconder, Councillor Dange, Councillor Bodner. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favour? Opposed? That will be carried. If I can ask if anyone has a conflict of interest this evening. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have an indirect pecuniary interest. I'm within the 120 meters of the property. As a matter of fact, I'm across the street from it, so, okay.
Thank you, Councillor Doucette. We'll now move forward with the public hearing under the Planning Act. Mr. Aquilina or Mr. Axe? The floor is yours. Welcome. Second one.
Sorry?
Second
Yes,
one.
second one. And I promise there will be less reading. So,
Floor yours, F.
thank you. All right, public hearing under the Planning Act for 287 Kalali Street East. Purpose of the meeting, the purpose of this meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act is to consider an application to amend City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 1150/97/81 as amended. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment was initiated by Caisse Populaire Welland Limité for the property legally known as lots 24 to 26 NP 788, former township of Humberstone, in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 287 Kalali Street East. Notice of method of notice. Notice of public meeting was administered in accordance with Section 34, subsection 12, 13, and 14 of the Planning Act as amended in Section 3 of Ontario Regulation 545/06. The notice of public meeting was mailed to property owners within 120 meters of the property on September 24th. A public notice sign was posted on the property on or before September 24th, 2013, and a copy of the public notice was also posted on the city's website on September 24th, 2013. An explanation of the procedure that's to be followed. There will be a presentation of the application for the zoning bylaw amendment. There will be comments from the applicant, should their agent have any, questions of clarification from councillors to planning staff or the applicant's agent, oral presentations and or questions by members of the public, an announcement respecting written notice of passage of the zoning bylaw amendment, and a explanation of future meetings. So the zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning of the property, which is currently, well, sorry, I'll start with the official plan. It's currently designated in the urban residential area of Port Colborne in the current city's current official plan from 1980. In the adopted 2012 official plan, it's also in an area designated urban residential. Both of these areas permit neighborhood commercial uses, convenience stores as an example. And in the city's zoning bylaw, it is currently zoned R2-26 bank, which permits a bank in addition to the regular uses of the second density residential zone. So we received, at the time that the report was written, I need to clarify, we had only received 2 comments from members of the public. So Lydia and Jerry Coble, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, my apologies. Sorry? Cable, even better. They are opposed to rezoning because of the type of business being proposed for the property, because of the long business hours, traffic noise, etc. They feel that it's not going to be complementary to the residential neighborhood, and they are concerned about property values and their potential to be decreased. Audrey Dunham from 186 Kalali Street East, she's not opposed to the rezoning, but has concerns about traffic at the intersection of McCrae Avenue and Kalali Street East, as cars will be leaving the property's parking lot on Kalali Street East, and as well as traffic leaving the McCrae Street entrance. She'd ultimately like to see the north parking lot closed, with the west parking lot as the only location for parking. We've received comments at the time of writing the report from the Building Division in Fire and Emergency Services and Canadian Niagara Power and Regional Municipality of Niagara. None of them offer any objections to the rezoning, but Building, Fire, and Canadian Niagara Power offer some cautionary notes for future land uses and uses of the building. Prior to the meeting, we've received a number of public comments. Jeanette Thompson of 412 Lakehurst Circle Road, Lakehurst, Ontario, who's writing on behalf of Mona and Roland Breton of 17 Wellington Street, has a number of issues with the rezoning application and feels that without a traffic impact analysis, market analysis, and a planning justification report, a decision by City Council is premature, and would also like to see a site plan agreement entered into between the city and the property owner. This comment and the additional comments that were received prior to the meeting will be included in the recommendation report package. Also received are a number of petitions that have been signed by area residents. Generally, they feel that the rezoning will bring down the property value. Traffic congestion issues, again with McCrae intersection and the parking lot onto Kalali Street East. Business hours and business practices that are quite different from the bank, including refuse containers and people arriving and leaving at all hours of the day, potentially, and the problems that will bring with it, albeit rodents from, or be it rather rodents for the refuse bins, or groups of teens or other loiterers as customers. And they are also, again, pointing out that there is a convenience store that is 14 houses away on Kalali Street East, which is the Avondale, and that there is no need for the store in this area. It is not a fit for the residential neighborhood. So these comments were received from Lydia and Jerry Cable again at 194 Kalali Street East. John Collinger, I believe that says, Lisa Riddell, Vivian Marwick of 299 Kalali Street East, the residents of 184 Kalali Street East, Francis Bull of 133 McRae Avenue, and Mark Coliti, and he does not give his address. So I've reviewed the current designation of the property in the current official plan and the adopted official plan. The zoning bylaw, again, it's R226 currently. The proposal would be to add the uses that are permitted within the neighborhood commercial zone, which would be a convenience type retail store, personal service shop, day nursery, a takeout restaurant, and a pet grooming establishment, and uses, buildings, and structures accessory thereto. And that would be in addition to the property retaining its current bank special designation, as well as the uses permitted in the second density R2 residential zone. And there is a number of special regulations that would apply to the zone. I'm not going to get into those, but basically it's recognizing the existing setbacks that are found on the property. And I also received a comment, from the engineering department just prior to the meeting again. They're not opposed to the rezoning, but sees that there is a traffic issue with the reverse out spots on Kalali Street East, and there may be a requirement to alter the parking area in front as it permits vehicles to back out onto Kalali Street East, which is not preferred. So that's the report. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the City of Port Colborne to the Ontario Municipal Board. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the City of Port Colborne before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the person or public body may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there is reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. So the next section of the meeting now is comments of the applicant or their agent.
Thank you, Mr. Atch. Members of the gallery are here today. First, we're going to ask the applicant if he has any comments. Mr. Lambie, you're representing the applicant. Brian, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, members. We are applying to change the zoning of this property to add the neighborhood commercial uses on top of what exists on this property. You're familiar with it. The most recent use was the bank at the Case Populaire. We have an interested party who wants to establish a convenience type retail store. That's the reason for the application. The exterior of this site is essentially complete. It's built, it has parking, there's adequate parking for the proposed use. And as a commercial use, it's automatically subject to site plan control. So when, if the zoning is approved and an application for any change of use is made, the city will have site plan control over the property. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lambie. Members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? With none, thank you, Mr. Lambie.
Thank you.
Mr. Atch, the floor is yours again.
All right, thank you. So there's no questions to the applicant. Questions to planning staff for clarification?
Members of council, any questions to planning staff? Councillor Demeray?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Axe, I would just like to request that all the people who have taken time to make comment or appear here tonight be given ample notice when this does come before council for decision.
Mr. Atch?
Okay, that certainly can be arranged. The problem is that many of the petitions that were handed in prior to the meeting do not include the home addresses of the residents. So there is going to be the form. It is currently on the table in Committee Room 3, that if members of the public do not believe they gave their addresses to the Planning Department, they can sign the form, and please record your address.
Thank you, Evan. Councillor?
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, if I may, this issue comes up here, and I'm sorry to bring it up at this one because it also involves Ramey Road zoning, getting notice to people. The report's not issued until Thursday in accordance with your procedure bylaw. Nobody gets it until you do. And I would really like to, if we mailed on Friday, like the holiday, still not going to get the report. And to get on the agenda, it takes a special consideration. We know that right now the bylaw doesn't provide us with an opportunity to send it out early. And I would, Mr. Mayor, during the general discussion of council, for this circumstance, this request, as well as the one dealing with the quarry, if there's an opportunity to consider a change in the procedure bylaw, that we can send this stuff out before the council meeting, providing we also provide the council with a report, so that you have it in hand ahead of time. It's really come to my attention, we can't get it out. It's just not able to get out without until you get notice, and we want to try to solve that. I've heard it loud and clear again, and tonight again, to try to get this notice and these reports out to people prior to council consideration. So I would request council, although it's in this section, to provide us or give us some opportunity to speak to this during the general business session of committee.
Thank you, Mr. Heil. A question. Council does receive the reports on the Thursday prior. The agenda, as well as each report, is put on the website when it goes to council?
Yes, Your Worship, in accordance with the notice, everything is published. Even when we give you notice, I also believe it goes on late Thursday, if not Friday morning for sure, in accordance with the procedure.
So essentially, when council gets it in their hands or our hands, it's also put on the website for the public to peruse.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I think one of the issues here is with due notice, is to give that notice out, and we can do that well before. We do recognize, or staff recognizes, when the report will be coming back to council. And I think, although the Planning Act doesn't ask or doesn't demand it, we can still, under special circumstances, especially those circumstances where it warrants, when we have public attention to it, more so than other reports, that in fact, when the request is made, that we would in fact let the public know, especially those that have expressed an interest, well in advance, even before the report's made, to give folks a heads up that it's going to be coming on this date, and to access the report, to simply go to our website, and of course access the report from our website, as we as members of council do. Mr. Howe?
Your Worship, well, planning staff, in an effort to try and keep up with the terms and the times and the conditions of the Planning Act, they endeavor to move it along as quickly as possible. I wouldn't want to be in a position of saying it's going to come to this meeting when all of a sudden there's a glitch and it doesn't get to that meeting, goes to another. We've had to cancel sometimes things before. We will endeavor, and I'll work close with Planning Director Aquilina to try to make sure that we can produce some kind of process that does in fact provide as early notice as we can.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. With that stated, I am going to go to questions of the public. Members of the gallery, are there any folks here that would like to speak on this issue? This would be the issue of this planning application. Are there any folks that would like to speak on it, or have any questions? If you do, if you want to come forward to the podium, name and address, and you're good to go. Welcome.
Hello. Nice to meet you. I'm Mark Coletti from 190 Kalali. I'm directly across from the store, and I feel it's going to bring my property value down instantly. And all the people that signed my petition, that was from yesterday. I've been busy, so I've only had one day to do this, and I can get everyone's addresses, and I can even get back out into the neighborhood and probably get a few more houses and whatever. We're the ones that wrote up the paperwork and did the petition and everything, so we just want to make sure that our neighborhood's, it's a beautiful place and we all love it, so.
Any further information that you may want to provide, or if you want to add to that petition, you're more than welcome to do that, because the report still has to come back to council
Sure.
in a few weeks' time. Evan, what are we looking at in terms of timing?
Sorry, with the this week being a short week, October the 28th is out of the question, but November 12th is the most.
What are you shooting for?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Evan. Members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? With none, thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. Are there any other comments or questions on this application? With none, Evan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you wish to be notified of the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, you may make a written request to the clerk. Only those persons and public bodies that give the clerk a written request for the notice of the passing of the bylaw will be given notice. On to the final section, explanation of future meetings. This concludes the public hearing under the Planning Act. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will be placed on council's agenda at a future meeting, most likely November 12th, 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. With that, members of council, I will ask for a motion to adjourn this portion of tonight's agenda. Councillor Danch, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Carried. Evan, great job. Thank you. We will now move to our committee of the whole agenda. Members of council, I will ask the clerk first off if she has any addendum items to introduce this evening. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you, Ashley. Members of council, if I can have a motion to confirm the agenda, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest this evening? Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to declare an indirect pecuniary interest with item number 12, as I'm a member of the branch 56th Royal Canadian Legion, and within the body of that letter, it speaks to the possibility of a financial donation from the city. So I will not be voting on that, but we'll vote on the balance of the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Any further disclosures? Members, with no further disclosures, we'll now move on to items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Steele.
Item 12 for the conflict.
Further items? Councillor Butters.
I'd like to lifted item number 6, and we're directed to lift item 17 as well.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Further items? If I can have a member of council lift item 4. Councillor Danch, if you can lift item 4, please. Thank you. Item 9. Councillor Doucette. And that's it. So with that, or those lifted, members, if we can have a motion to approve the remainder of the items, please. Councillor Kenny, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We'll now move on to presentations. We have one presentation this evening, Mr. Terry Cease of the YMCA Board of Volunteers, as well as Sue Smith, Port Colborne YMCA member, and no stranger to this chamber of late, Janet St. Armand, YMCA of Niagara CEO, regarding a financial update and programs of the YMCA Port Colborne. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's great to have you out tonight.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us this evening.
Terry, if you just want to push the button there, and you're live.
Thank you. Thanks for having us this evening, Mayor, Council, members of the public. As a volunteer of the YMCA of Niagara Board of Directors and a Port Colborne resident, I am pleased to share with you our 6-month update regarding the impact and achievements we've accomplished together with the opening of the Valet Health and Wellness Center in the Port Colborne YMCA. It is a success story that we are proud to share. While we will provide you with an update of the program and fiscal numbers for our first half year, the real story is the impact our new YMCA has had on individuals, families, and the Port Colborne community. Even my wife has a story or two that I hear about at the dinner table most evenings. But before Janet St. Amand YMCA CEO, and I provide the 6-month update, I'm honored to invite Sue Smith to come forward and share her YMCA story. Her story deals with the number 7, and as an accountant, I'm crazy about numbers. But the number 7 in this case means 7 months, 70 pounds, 7 children, and a future volunteer. But as the YMCA in Port Colborne has continued to grow, so has Sue's story. And we continue to show progress. So Sue's story tonight is about 8 months, 80 pounds, and 9 children. May Sue be an inspiration to all of us. Please welcome Sue.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sue.
Thank you very much. Only those who risk going too far can possibly find out how far they can go. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me and the opportunity to share my story. My name is Sue Smith. I'm a mother of 9, a newlywed, an entrepreneur, and a Y member. My weight has always been a struggle in my adult life. I was a member at another Y in the region and stopped going back in May of 2012. I slowly gained 70 pounds. During Christmas time, I had a photograph taken at an event I was at. And when my camera was handed back to me, I was shocked and disgusted to see what I looked like. I hadn't realized the change the excess weight had made to my body. I was mad at myself. Those feelings didn't change what I was doing, though. I continued the downslide even though I knew the steps to success. I set a goal for myself, and my husband Scott was on board with me. Both of us wanted to change our habits and take care of our health. We made a decision to start eating whole foods. We eliminated wheat, some dairy, sugar, and diet pop out of our diets. We also rejoined the YMCA as a family on February 16th in Port Colborne. I was excited to be a member here. The new facility had so much to offer. I started working out upstairs in the cardio room and walking the track. I was so disappointed with the challenge of exercise for me when the year before I was running 5K. However, I remained committed to working out 4 days a week. 8 months later, I have lost 80 pounds and have gained confidence, self-esteem, and most importantly, my self-respect back. But I don't take the credit for my success. My success is a result of everyone at the Y. Ben McDermott stopped me one day and asked how I was doing. We chatted about my progress, and he congratulated me. I told him how I felt my achievement was a team effort from everyone at the Y. He looked puzzled at first, and I told him I couldn't be here without the help of many others in my life. The support and encouragement of my husband, Scott, gives me, the women in the babysitting room who love and care for my 2-year-old Kane, the energetic and fun instructors in the kids program who keep my 6, 11, and 12-year-olds Noah, Penny, and Abby busy, the fitness instructors who encourage, motivate, and develop programs that challenge me and keep me participating, the front desk staff and maintenance staff who know our names, welcome us, and take the time to chat. And then there's the untold story of community building that happens every time you are in the center. I've been a Niagara Region resident for 4 years. I've always felt like I can fit in no matter where I am. Wherever I live, the Y is my go-to place to meet people who share a common interest with me. The Port Colborne Y and the Vale Wellness Center is unique. I feel like I belong here. The center draws in the whole community with what hi buddy, with what is offered here. There's something for everyone, whether it's the aquatics class where on a slow day, you can count 20+ women in the pool. The students dropping in from Lakeshore to grab a sub and sit and chat, the school performance in the lobby, a graduation ceremony, the many hockey games, or even just meeting a friend for a walk around the track. The center serves a greater purpose than just to exercise. It's a gathering place for a community. When I was asked to speak this evening, I kept thinking about the Y Strong Kids campaign and what the campaign promotes for kids. I believe the Y does so much more than just building strong kids. I believe the Y has this wonderful ripple effect with all it offers. The Y supports moms and dads who are growing strong kids and building strong families and making a stronger community. I personally think the real success story here is the Port Colborne YMCA and the Vale Wellness Center. My future is a healthy one. My goals have evolved as a result of my progress. My journey includes the YMCA and losing another 50 pounds. I had a seed planted a few months ago by two of the Y's fitness instructors, Melissa and Lindsay. It reminded me of a long-forgotten dream I had. 10 years ago, I had entertained the idea of becoming a Y fitness instructor and give back what so many great Y volunteers have given to me and my family. That dream of mine becomes a reality this Saturday. I applaud everyone involved in making the Vale Health and Wellness Center possible. You have created a wonderful place for our community, and I thank you.
What an amazing story. It's stories like that that keep you going. And I've been involved in the Y for, I think, 9 years now, and I never get tired of hearing them. And Sue, testament to your dedication to the Y. Much appreciated. On with the show. The partnership between the city and the YMCA was years in the making and was formalized with the signing of our partnership agreement in June of 2012. We have accomplished so much together in such a short time. The partnership enabled the city to leverage YMCA expertise in serving community, while the YMCA was able to extend and deepen its charitable mission in Port Colborne. The YMCA is open to all, family-friendly, provides quality programs, develops staff and volunteers, builds partnerships, and provides services based on quality and efficiency. From the beginning, our partnership success was based on key elements: trust, good planning process, clear expectations, consensus of what is important, a willingness to share, an alignment of goals, and a long-term vision. As we reflect on this list of conditions for success, they are and continue to be foundational in our collective ability to serve the community through this partnership. I will ask Janet to come up and provide more details as to our first 6 months with the Y and Port Colborne.
Hi, I wanted to start off to acknowledge that we're really here today because of the vision of this council, the vision of our YMCA Board of Directors, and the collaborative approach that our staff together have brought so that both organizations could achieve where we are today. So I wanted to start off and acknowledge that. Our first 6 months, as Terry mentioned, our Y worked through a good planning process that was conservative and based on market research, where we developed projections that gave us a picture of potential membership for Port Colborne. Well, we targeted the potential growth over time to reach 2,800 members on average. What we did not project was the accelerated pace at which the community would come together to participate. This is a great news story, and the Y remained nimble over the first 6 months in its phased approach to expanding staff and programs to complement and respond to that rapid growth. Focusing on supporting our local economy and building leaders, the Y has trained and hired a team of 65 staff, many of whom are young people and full-time students. We've also welcomed 15 YMCA volunteers, and this number will grow over time as we engage others like Sue to commit their time and their talent to volunteerism. The launch of the YMCA Leader Corps is another pathway to develop young leaders that will grow into adults who will contribute to the health of our community. Strengthening that sense of giving back through philanthropy and our YMCA Strong Kids campaign is yet another way that strengthens community. Our first 6 months in enhancing health and strengthening families. The YMCA peaked last spring in serving 2,200 members, an amazing number. Your support in providing the YMCA the use of the Rosalong Center to offer the community a taste of what the Y was going to look like at the Y Welcome Center prior to opening really helped create that energy and enthusiasm way before opening. That too contributed to the strong numbers in the first 6 months. What is also interesting was the mix of members. We recognize that families come in many shapes and sizes, from lone parents, households, to blended families, to nuclear families, to empty nesters. But the fact remains that 75% of all of our members have joined as a family. And that really speaks to strengthening families and meeting the needs as a place for families to come, all families in this community, to the Y and to the Valley Health and Wellness Center. It also was wonderful to accommodate close to 100 YMCA bridging members, those who had previously participated as members in the Centennial Pool, and to assist with their transition to a new Y experience. At the end of August, we had around 70% of those bridging members were continuing their involvement with the Y, and I believe that that number is up to around 75% as we get closer to the away from the holiday season. We also are demonstrating the inclusive approach to service, and at the end of August, we had approximately 20% of our members being financially assisted, and we anticipate that number will continue to grow. Supporting participation for all. As you know, the YMCA does offer financial assistance to individuals and families unable to participate, unable to afford to participate in the Y due to their financial circumstances. It is not a fixed rate of assistance, but rather a tailored rate based on an individual's specific financial circumstance. Assistance is done confidentially, so that in a preschool program, almost 1 in 4 children will be assisted, but no one knows who they are. This is a living example of our commitment to being open to everyone. Providing this assistance for children is made possible through our Y Strong Kids campaign. Our first 6 months fostering the health and development of children and youth. It's no surprise then that if 75% of our members are linked as a family, 50% of our members represented are children and youth. We play an increasingly integral role in serving children and youth, supporting their health and wellness and the needs of young people. We launched our Youth Action Program, which is open to all youth and is linked to the Youth Action Program at Steele Street. This summer, we also welcomed 160 children to our summer day camp program. We know that children and their families are also participating in the Family Swim and the Open Swim and other day programs. The Y has worked hard to accommodate local community groups who were previously involved in the city in continuing their services, along with numerous community agencies and new groups to explore ways to involve them as they work with their clients. This fall, 4 groups are actively involved in providing service within the Y space. That includes Special Olympics, the Port Colborne Youth Basketball Program, Piranha Swim Team, which is done in conjunction with the city, and our Ontario Early Years Center is also included. We've also included the water polo program that was previously a city program into the Y program offering. So what are the program offerings in the last 6 months? It's important to point out that program development at the Y focuses on choice, inclusivity, convenience, access for all, family orientation, and healthy lifestyle. Based on our accelerated membership numbers this fall, we are already delivering 288 of the 300 hours of program per week, which was our annual goal. We have also established 244 of the 245 programs per week that we projected as part of our annual goal. But we're not done, and the mix of programs and program equipment and selection will continually evolve to remain relevant to the needs and interests of the day and the unique interests of Port Colborne. Stewards of a community asset, it is important, and we value and bring to the partnership the commitment to cleanliness, well-maintained equipment and facilities to ensure that today's wonderful facility looks just as good 20 years from now. As noted in the 6-month report that was provided to Council in more detail, we certainly have exceeded the 12-month goal for our average monthly membership numbers, close to 960. Along with that is another 98 bridging members. And as mentioned before, 3 out of 4 YMCA members have joined as a family, and 50% of our members are children and youth. Again, a wonderful picture that we can all be proud of. As we look at the financial highlights, the higher than planned number of members in the initial 6 months resulted in earlier than planned program expansion and increased expenses and staff programming and cleaning supplies. As in most human services, 80% of our costs is staffing. And comparison also includes an extra half a month as we opened mid-month in February. As with all of our child's programs, maintaining appropriate staff-to-child ratios is essential to the quality and safety of programs. And this increase in staffing to maintain those ratios is reflected in the financial picture. Given the unique nature of any startup operation, the Y has achieved in the first 6 months a net operating variance that is very close to plan and represents 1.6% based on the total revenue. As we look to the future years, when the operational ramp-up costs will have decreased, there will be an increase in the deferred capital depreciation line, which is part of the plan. Also note that the capital investment in the facility redesign is close to plan and covered things such as the conversion of a storage area into the play center for children that we use today. We still anticipate some increase in costs in our program equipment as our participation levels continue to increase. All in all, this is a conservative approach to a financial plan and program plan with a net that is very close in the first 6 months. Looking ahead, we continue to grow in membership. We're continuing our collaboration. We're continue to develop our programs and expand according to the membership growth. We continue to invest in resources to support community needs, continue our Strong Kids campaign, and continue to support financial assistance to allow people to access programs. And lastly, to continue growth in employment and volunteerism. And I know tonight we have one more, and that is Sue, and I'm really looking forward to her involvement. So I welcome your questions and your comments as we move forward.
Thank you, Janet. Well done. Well stated. Members of Council, are there any questions or comments? With none, I see Billy's got his thumbs up. Just a quick comment to Janet and to Terry as well as to Sue. Thank you. Thank you for coming out this evening and expressing your positive message to the community. Most importantly, Sue, congratulations to you. 9 kids. My God, good luck. Good luck to you as well. But to as well, it's great to hear those stories because that's in fact why this and past councils have really moved this project forward. you know, let's face it, at the end of the day, with the assistance of the YMCA and the many volunteers that are there on a daily basis, and of course our staff, which is looking after the cold side, which council is going to hear about later on this evening, it's made it happen. You've ensured that the future of Port Colborne is going to sustain health and wellness, and quite frankly, fun, and a vibrant area of the community, which we hope would be not only within those bricks and mortar, but across the entire city, taking advantage of all the parks and the marina and the beaches and the soccer fields and the baseball fields, and the list goes on that's available here in our community. But you're an integral part of that. You folks have done a great job. 6 months, it's wow, with respect to what you've been able to accomplish. So to all of you and to your board and to your volunteers and to those that utilize the facility, thank you. Job well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Members of council, we're now going to move on to delegations. We do have one delegation this evening, Mr. Chris Wilson, who's going to speak to us on behalf of the Board of Niagara Community Foundation regarding declaration of November as the month of philanthropy. Chris, welcome as always.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council and city staff. My name's Chris Wilson. I think I know most of the members of council. I'm a lawyer here in Port Colborne. It's been my privilege to serve as a volunteer with the Niagara Community Foundation for about 8 years now, and I've served on the board for the last 5 as a member representing Port Colborne. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening about a number of items, and maybe it's all good news tonight, Mr. Mayor, because more good news after the discussion on the Valet Centre. One of the leadership roles that the Niagara Community Foundation has taken on since our inception in the year 2000 is the promotion and education of the impact of philanthropy in our community. Now, philanthropy is a big word and it's hard to say. I always think of the Wizard of Oz when he's presenting the lion with his heart. He can't say philanthropist, so he says good deed doer. And that's what philanthropy is all about. It's hard to pronounce, and it's a concept that's often misunderstood. You don't need to have lots of money to be a philanthropist. You don't need a university degree to be a philanthropist. And you certainly don't need to be over 70 years of age. Philanthropy involves a generosity of spirit, a desire to help, and a firm belief that you can make a difference in your community, regardless of how much or how little you have to give. We read every week about the generosity of school children and residents in supporting a variety of charitable causes with bake sales, the runs, the walkathons, penny and garage sales. We are certainly appreciative of many volunteer hours that go into running and supporting our community organizations. Canada is the only country in the world to have a named day to celebrate philanthropy. National Philanthropy Day is on November 15th. It recognizes and celebrates the profound impact that philanthropy and those people active in the philanthropic community have made to our lives and our communities and our world. Now, November is the month when the United Way campaign is just wrapping up. Local charities are starting on their annual holiday campaigns, and people are thinking about their year-end donations. The Niagara Community Foundation wants to raise the awareness of the importance of philanthropy and to recognize the contribution that so many people and organizations have made to our community. It's because of these reasons that the Niagara Community Foundation has set as a priority to encourage all municipalities to join us in proclaiming November as Philanthropy Month. I have or Ms. Palmieri, on behalf of the Foundation, has sent the text of a proclamation we would ask you to consider later in your meeting tonight. We're kicking off the month of Philanthropy Month with Random Act of Kindness Day. This has been ongoing for 5 years now, I believe, sponsored by the Foundation. And we encourage members of council, staff, and the residents who hear the meeting tonight or watching on cable to join us with this celebration. There are very many simple ways in which you can share a moment of kindness with a family member, a friend, a colleague, or a stranger. I brought with me tonight the Random Act of Kindness cards, and I'll leave them to distribute to council. Now, maybe I might be going too far. Maybe the parking control officer might be handing out Random Act of Kindness cards and giving a little 15-minute bonus, but that's the kind of activity. Activities during philanthropy, the one I like the best is if you're going through the drive-through, hand the card to the attendant and pay for the person behind you. Just do it on November the 1st. Just one special thing. Hand them the card and pay it forward just a little bit, just to bring to mind the importance of such activities. Other activities during Philanthropy Month include our 12th annual Canadian Leaders Breakfast, including celebrating social innovation. On November 21st, we are honored to have Senator Hugh Segal as our speaker on the topic of poverty eradication and economic growth, an important issue to many in our community. On November 14th, we'll be participating in the inaugural Over 60 event. This is a celebration recognizing 60 volunteers in Niagara over the age of 60. At the end of the month, we will be announcing our grants awarded in 2013 to organizations across Niagara. Before I close, I'd like to bring you a quick update on the work of the Foundation over the past 12 months. We saw our endowments grow from $12 million at the beginning of last year to more than $22.5 million as of this August. Much of our growth is now coming from estate gifts, which makes our work bittersweet. The generosity of donors, some of whom we have never met, is truly remarkable, and their impact on our community will be felt long into the future. Some of you, Mr. Mayor, and I think some of the members of Council, were on Council when the Port Colborne Community Fund was created back in 2007 with a $50,000 donation from Port Colborne Hydro. At that time, we recruited volunteers to help us raise the level of awareness in and donations to the Port Colborne Community Fund. We were also joined by members of Council. Councillor Steele served in the term of the last Council, and Councillor Desmarais has served in the term of this Council. We are very appreciative of the time and the expertise of this committed group of people. I'm pleased to report that since 2007, donors to the Port Colborne Community Fund have contributed almost $650,000 and created a number of named endowment funds. This is continuing. Some of you may have known Carol Leppard. Carol was a music teacher at Steele Street High School. She's originally from Waynfleet. Through her estate, a fund was created which enables every child at the school to attend a performing arts event and for one child to have music lessons, and if the funds permit, to purchase musical instruments and supplies. This is a wonderful legacy from a teacher who inspired so many children in her work in our community, and the work will continue in the future in perpetuity. Other Port Colborne organizations recently supported include Port Cares, with a grant of $6,280 for the purchase of a lift truck for their reach-out centre. I apologize to Councillor Desmarais for my French. Le Centre Polyvalent des Ans Francophones de Port Colborne has received a $500 grant to purchase resources for their DVD library. Community Living Port Colborne Waynfleet, with 2 grants in recent years, $8,600 to provide a team program to at-risk youth, and $1,652 for therapeutic art sessions for their summer program. Earlier this year, we delivered copies of our 2012 annual report to members of Council. In this report, we featured a story on the grant to Le Centre Polyvalent. The report also has a complete list of all the Port Colborne organizations supported with grants from either our donor-directed funds, and there are many other organizations, churches and other groups in Port Colborne that received funds annually from donor-directed funds, or our various granting programs. I brought additional copies of the annual report for each of you tonight, and just ask that you share it with somebody in our community, just so they continue to hear the story of the work of the Foundation. This community has meant a lot to me. This organization is one of which I'm very proud to have served as a member of the board, and I would be remiss in my role as a director if I didn't encourage each and every one of you to consider creating some type of endowed legacy to support this community in which you proudly serve. Not necessarily with the Foundation, but keep philanthropy at top of mind. It's something that I, along with the others, have chosen to do in partnership with the Niagara Community Foundation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to encourage you to proclaim November as Philanthropy Month, to ask you to celebrate Random Act of Kindness Day on November 1st, and to bring you an update of our work in the past year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of Council.
Thank you, Chris. Well done. Well stated.
Pass them down?
Sure, that'd be great. Members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? Chris, once again, great job.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Mayor.
I do want to
Council.
thank you personally as well, and the many members from the Port Colborne community that have participated with the Community Foundation. I know Councillor Demery is there now, Councillor Steele of the past.
And
We see
Claudia's-
We
Claudia's
see
here
Claudia
tonight,
Walker.
too, so-
Claudia, is there a committee in Port Colborne you don't sit on? Like, really?
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, as well, and I know how much work you guys are doing, so greatly appreciated, folks. With no questions or comments, I'm going to move on now to my mayor's report. A few things, guys, that I do want to bring to your attention. First off, as you may know, I will be traveling to Ottawa within the next few weeks to discuss with the federal government, in particular the Ministry of Transport, the transfer of lands that are currently within our community under their control, and as we know, we would like as a council, as a community, as a city corporation, to bring back into productivity. There are certain pockets of land that they do currently control, and we have plans for. Therefore, and with the slow pace of a snail, with some of those lands, I'm going to attempt to go down to Ottawa and meet with the minister in particular, to try and expedite the movement of these lands to ourselves as well as the private sector to bring these back into productivity. I have received, on your prompting, members of council, with respect to the marijuana farms that are currently being applied for within our community, I have received word from our MP, Mr. Malcolm Allen, his office in particular, his assistant, that a member of Health Canada will not attend any public meeting of any nature on the issue of the marijuana farms. Based on my prompting, I have therefore recommended that MP Allen himself facilitate a meeting and bring any questions or concerns that would come from that meeting back to Health Canada, and then following that, it would be appropriate that we would have a second meeting to therefore bring those responses from Health Canada back to the public and respond to the public as per their concerns and questions they in fact may have. Next, at the federal level, I am currently dealing with the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation on many issues, but one in particular that I wanted to bring to your attention were the bus shelters that have been discussed on many occasions of the past, and I am formally requesting that the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation consider the installation of bus shelters at all three bridges, 19, which is the Jackknife on Main Street, as well as 19A, which is the metal bridge on Mellenby, as well as Bridge 21, which is the Clarence Street Bridge, to consider reintroducing, because as many of you know, we used to have them at some locations, but reintroducing and reinstalling shelters on both sides of the bridge, east and west side, at all three bridge locations. At the provincial level, first off, I've invited the Minister of Rural Affairs to come down and visit the city of Port Colborne, if not the entire region of Niagara, depending on how much time. We're going to start here in Port Colborne and work ourselves north from here, and to visit the rural areas of Port Colborne, Waynfleet, as well as Fort Erie on Niagara South Coast, but as well moving, again, depending on his time, moving to the north end to see firsthand the issues that small communities here in Ontario, Port Colborne being one, are forced to deal with on a daily basis, whether it be healthcare, whether it be rural issues pertaining to infrastructure, pertaining to a lot of the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. You, as well as the community, private sector, are dealing with on a regular basis, that he can see firsthand those issues. Therefore, when we speak to him about our expectations, he will recognize once again firsthand what we're speaking of. I have forwarded to members of council a report on the provincial energy planning initiatives. Please, if there's any questions or comments, get back to me on that so I can respond to those accordingly at the provincial level at Queen's Park. At the regional level, and I don't want to steal Dave's thunder, but there are a few things that I have forwarded to you for your information. And please, if there's any questions or comments, please contact me or Dave directly so that we can deal with them down at Schmalm Parkway at the region. Some of those things that I forwarded to you, and I'm hoping you guys are reading those stacks of emails that are being forwarded to you, because I do send those to you. I don't send them all to you, but I do send you the ones that I think you have interest in. A few of late was the region's quarterly financial update, I sent you a report on that, a report on the Niagara's perspective with respect to the Greenbelt Plan, a review on that plan, the report on streamlining the mineral aggregate application process, revised smart growth design criteria for development charge reduction programs, very, very important for you to understand if in fact you're being asked, especially from those in the private sector. The revised smart growth design criteria for the development charges reductions program is in fact something that aligns itself well with our reduction programs through planning, as well as those through the province and the federal initiatives that Stephen brings to our attention quite regularly. The Niagara Region land supply analysis, once again, very important to understand and to recognize Niagara's water, wastewater strategies and the projects that are currently underway, especially as they relate to Port Colborne and the south here, the southern areas of Niagara. The report on improving two-way communications between the local area municipalities in the region, something that we're very aggressive on at the region right now, is ensuring that our staff has a better communication with the staff up on Schmoen Parkway, that being the region. And quite frankly, just to expand a bit more on that, we're also doing the same with the province and the federal level, through my office and through Stephen's office, trying to expedite different things that we're working on. A report on the service level agreements with all local area municipalities with respect to development charge administration. What does that mean? Trying to bring together a more of a one-stop shop when it comes to the private sector investing, especially when it comes to development charge administration. That way Dan is communicating more fluently with the region, and that way we don't have developers or investors having to go back and forth between Schmoen Parkway and Charlotte Street. We do not want it to become a Charlotte's Web. We understand that, and Dan is working very diligently with Patrick over at the region, Robson at planning, as well as with Peter Colosimo over at development services of the region to ensure that it's a one-stop shop versus a 3 or 4 stop shop. Two more is the 2012 Municipal Measures Program. This is something that's, the report does speak about the benchmarking and of course the performance by both our level as well as the regional level. Once again, very important for our customers to understand. And finally, I'm going to touch briefly on the regional smoking bylaw, but I think Dave's going to touch on that, so I don't want to steal us under. But we're ready to move forward with the implementation of the bylaw. And just as an FYI, the amendments that this City Council had put forward are included in that smoking bylaw. So there are exemptions with respect to certain anomalies that we have here in the south end, such as the beaches and, of course, the special events. Notwithstanding, of course, what we want to work with within our BIAs to, in fact, have a smoking ban in our BIAs all year round and what I mean by a smoking ban is have certain designated smoking areas in the downtown all year round, not just during special events. So something we're going to be working on with staff, and I'll leave the rest to Dave to touch on. At the local level, as you may have read, the Niagara Regional Police Services Board has decided not to amalgamate District 6 here in the city of Port Colborne and Wainfleet with District 3 in the city of Welland. Great news for the city, and I do want to thank the board for recognizing just that. That being the value of which we, as the city of Port Colborne and the township of Wainfleet, place on District 6 here in the city of Port Colborne, as well as not putting too much emphasis or not putting too much pressure, I'll use that word instead, on District 3 in the city of Welland, and therefore dealing with those issues in that community and showing respect for District 3 to show their diligence in that district for the residents of Welland. Lastly, at the local level I do want to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate all the folks that were involved, including our downtown BIA, in putting together the Downtown Harvest Festival this past weekend. I'm not sure if any of you folks went down there, but it was just overwhelming. The amount of different activities, the amount of booths, as well as the amount of folks that came out from all across Niagara, all across the province, and some parts of Western New York, to really enjoy the city of Port Colborne during this fall season. Just a job well done. And lastly, upcoming events. For those folks that enjoy a great taste of chili, the Chili Cook-Off is taking place this Saturday at the Lakeside Yacht Club on Lakeshore Road West, just down by the old Schofield Marina, right across the street. By all means, it's a great event, and once again, if you like chili, and by the way, really pace yourself, because although they give you little cups, they add up. And they do, you crawl out of there actually, because you're so full of the great chili that's being offered. So with that, by all means, come on out folks and take advantage of the chili cook-off that's happening over at Lakeside Yacht Club. The doors open over at Roselawn, October 19th and 20th. Go see Roselawn and, of course, all the things that Roselawn has to offer. Make your way up to the second and third floor, where it is, in fact, haunted. Believe me when I say that, because I've personally experienced it myself. But by all means, make your way onto Roselawn on the 19th and 20th for doors open. And finally, the Country Walk for Breast Cancer. This Sunday at Emerald Pines, Teresa Bizzo, Bonnie Jackson, Cheryl James, and the crew are all putting on the annual Country Walk for Breast Cancer, once again at Emerald Pines. A great event. Come on out and walk and raise money for breast cancer and a lot of the projects that they are, in fact, supporting here in the city of Port Colborne. And once again, October being Breast Cancer Month, please, by all means, take part in that event, because it's so important, especially to those that are fighting this terrible disease and those that are supporting those that are fighting this terrible disease. So come on out and be a part of the Country Walk for Breast Cancer. So with that, members of council, questions or comments? Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship, and no, Roselawn is not haunted. My father lived there. It's all a fallacy. Could be an old mayor that's
yeah, walking around there.
Who knows? Who knows? Anyways, Your Worship, just on behalf of the citizens of Ward 1, specifically the business community downtown, I want to thank you and Todd Schultz, who's a member, actually vice chair of the Police Services Board, for your work and making sure that the votes went the right way to keep the police station open. A number of businesses talked to me just on my travels throughout downtown prior to the decision being made, and there was very deep concern with regards to removing the police station. They feel that it having a presence here helps with the crime rate. With the increase in foot patrols over the last number of years, there is less vandalism downtown. Yes, there's the odd window broken, whether it's on purpose or an accident, we're not sure, but that rash of broken windows, some small fires being set, I think the police, with our help and the business community's help, came forward and were able to curb that. So they were afraid they're going to lose all that. So again, thank you very much. And you know what, it'll be another 4 years, it'll come back up, we all know that. But for 60 to 80,000, I think the citizens of Port Colborne can afford to pay the 60 or 80,000 to keep that station open, because that's all it costs. Other members can throw out high numbers of 300 and 400,000. All those members of the police force and the civilians that work there will be sent elsewhere. So it's not like you're saving money by getting rid of jobs. So those people will all work. The actual cost is very minimal for Port Colborne and the township of Wainfleet. So we, again, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And the one thing I do want to add is on your comments is the fact of the men and women in blue that work here every day. They deserve the credit. They're the ones that are out there in the cars, on their feet, or on the bicycles in the summer months, out there working with the business community, our staff sergeant, Chris Scotland, as well as the officers that are here daily, and even those that may not be here daily but still participate in different activities such as CIB, Central Intelligence, and others. They're the ones that really deserve the pat on the back for the work that they do. So our thanks go out to them on a daily basis to ensure the residents of Port Colborne are well looked after. So thanks, Bo, for recognizing that. Any further questions or comments? None? Dave, you're up. Councillor Barrick, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. I as well like to take the opportunity to thank you personally, Mr. Mayor, as well as Member Schultz of the Police Services Board for your well thought out comments and well researched statements. I attended both the previous Police Services Board meetings, so I was able to be there in person and see both you gentlemen in action to help sway the other board members. I'd also like to thank the entire Police Services Board. I think they get it. The vote was 6-1 in favor of keeping it open. Member Schultz had a very well-crafted motion that the rest of the board could get behind. Also like to thank Mayor April Jeffs from Wainfleet for her work in lobbying some of the police board members as well prior to the most recent meeting. Really they did make the right choice, I believe. It could have become very drawn out process both at the region for their budget and then perhaps to OCOPs, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very happy it has been concluded at the board level, and it's very clear what the decision is. So thanks for that. Mr. Mayor, in your report as well, you mentioned the smoking bylaw, so I'm not going to delve in too deep there, except to state that for public awareness as well, there is a $250 fine, whether there's a sign posted or not, and in public areas. And I know that was a bit of a point of conversation at the regional level, but it did pass. It did get a triple majority, so folks do have to be aware that this bylaw is in place. There's no signage required. You can still be fined. The intent really, though, is mostly for areas where children are, so playgrounds and things like that, and school, soccer fields and that. So it's important to be cognizant, especially when there's children around. I do want to touch base, Mr. Mayor, you noted you're going to Ottawa to speak with the Ministry of Transportation. As a member of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, I put forward a motion at that level regarding the region's water source protection. We know, especially in Port Colborne, we had a diesel spill in the canal not long ago, and there are concerns there in terms of accountability as well. There is a agreement between the Ministry of Transportation or the feds, an operating agreement with the St. Lawrence Seaway. So I put a motion forward at the MPCA to allow the discussion to occur on bringing those other agencies to the table in terms of accountability. Right now, it's understood that the COA is not taking any responsibility when it comes to water source protection. Port Colborne draws its water right out of the canal, so the motion that's been put forward really brings the Ministry of Transportation and the St. Lawrence Seaway to the table and discussing that very important issue, important to our health and our water source protection. I would also like to note that many of you may have read in the newspaper already that the Commissioner of Public Works at the region, Ken Brothers, is retiring effective October 31st. Ken Brothers was hired as Public Works Commissioner in 2007 and efficiently oversaw the department's 4 divisions: transportation, waste management, water and wastewater, and development services. In addition to leading a busy operational department, he successfully championed significant infrastructure investments, including highway reconstruction and extensions, including the 406 extension to Welland, the Niagara-on-the-Lake wastewater treatment plant, the Burgoyne Bridge renewal, etc. So certainly we wish that the region, Ken Brothers, all the best in his future endeavors. This really now leaves the region short 2 commissioners, as we still have an interim commissioner of corporate services. So once the new CAO, Harry Schlang, is in place at the end of the month, I'm sure he'll make it a priority to fill those top posts as well as others throughout the region. Looking forward now, Mr. Mayor, the region showed a very good video. I'm going to be showing it here tonight as well, called Imagine Niagara. The region has several policy plans that have been in place since the 1970s, and they're taking the opportunity the next little while to go over those again. We are asking the public their thoughts and seeking feedback both online. There will be community workshops, et cetera, et cetera. So the video I will be showing is on the region's website, and there's also a questionnaire, so if the public's able to go online and fill it out, they also have a chance to win an iPad. So
I would like to see a Niagara region where the whole area is more multicultural.
We imagine Niagara as a place with lots of fun and accessible natural places,
where we protect our environment now and in the future,
where we will always have walk-friendly communities, where everybody has a home.
Imaginez à Niagara là où tout le monde se sent chez lui.
We imagine a Niagara where people can easily travel between our communities.
How do you imagine Niagara?
I want you to imagine Niagara 50 years from now. Not just your local community, but all of our cities and towns and all they have to offer.
As the region continues to grow, it's important that we get the right balance.
It's important that we find that balance. And the best way to do that is through a plan that involves all of Niagara.
Here in Niagara, we strive to achieve this balance through the regional policy plan.
The plan balances many things that influence your everyday life, including jobs and industry, our environment, our farmland, the way we get around, where things can be built, and our infrastructure. The plan also considers how you want to share your thoughts and ideas for Niagara.
If you think about it, many parts of your life have been affected by a plan that's been in place since the 1970s.
So what does this all mean? It means finding a balance between developing office buildings for people to work in
And the irreplaceable farmland in Niagara that we take for granted.
It means supporting our local culture, a significant part of our economy.
It means finding the best ways to increase and sustain Niagara's business community. Planning for active transportation so we can be less reliant on our cars.
Finding suitable housing for all Niagara residents, now and in the future.
It means protecting our water for ourselves and our children.
So, why do we bring it up now?
Because some of these policies
haven't been reviewed since the 1970s.
When many of these policies were designed, Niagara was a different place with different challenges, opportunities, and realities. The new plan should reflect where we are now and where we want to be in the future.
So now, it's time.
So now it's time.
So now, it's time.
It's time.
It's time. It's time.
It's time to hear what you imagine for the future.
We are Niagara's future. What do you imagine for us? What do you imagine for us?
It's time to imagine a plan for Niagara that balances our people, places, and prosperity.
So now, it's time for you to tell us, how do you imagine Niagara?
How do you imagine Niagara?
How do you imagine Niagara? How do you imagine Niagara?
How do you imagine Niagara?
Complete the short survey below to share what you imagine for Niagara.
So that's a video attached to the survey on the region's website. However, the majority of stakeholders within the region will be contacted, like chambers of commerce, homebuilders associations, social services, et cetera. We've made sure that each of those community agencies will be in touch and contacted and throughout these processes. But also for the general public as well, not only online, but keep your eyes posted on newspaper ads and things like that. We'll have workshops moving forward also. So that's my report this evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Well done. Members of Council, any questions or comments to the Regional Councillor? Councillor Danch.
I just want to send Dave a thank you, and I'd like to thank the regional staff and the roads people for helping my friend out on Main Street there with her driveway issue. She was going through some real hurdles, and it didn't seem so difficult when it was all looked after by yourself and your staff, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Barrick. Appreciate it. Members of Council, we're now going to move on to your corner. Councillors' items, new business. Are there any Councillors' items, new business? Councillor Danch?
I was going to answer that note from my wife, but I guess we'll deal with this one first. I hope I say this properly. This is my first time for something like this, but I'd like to request and entertain an in-camera meeting for our next meeting being October 28th, and at that time, council can be informed on the legal position as far as what we're doing with the Birdie golf carts situation. So that's about all I've got to say for tonight.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll note that. Any further new business? Councillors' items. Councillor Kenny and Councillor Bodner. I'll give you a second, B. Councillor Bodner, you're all set to go? I'll come back to you in a second, B.
Apparently I'm a computer whiz, so I got everything right here. Mr. Mayor, you touched on doors open at Roselawn. Just like to expand on that a little bit. It certainly was an initiative by Friends of Roselawn, along with Harry and his staff. And it's just not your average doors open. This has been enhanced quite a bit by Friends of Roselawn, and there's community artists there, professional artists, performers, writers, art exhibits, tea room, free door prizes, and arts and culinary stylings by the students of Port Colborne High School. They really got involved in, so this is extremely expanded. If you've ever been to a Doors Open, not your average. Come on out and have a good look at Roselawn. I'm not sure we can get to the 3rd floor, Mr. Mayor. If council put more money into it, I'm sure we could fix that up and get there. But anyways, maybe the 2nd floor. So certainly there's lots to do October 19th and 20th, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And just on that same note, it's a binational Doors Open too. It involves, when you say Niagara, it's Niagara on the other side too, so it's a big deal. And also, if I can just plug Friends of Roselawn fundraisers, there's 3 of them coming up at the Roselawn Center. You can go on the city's website, punch in Roselawn, that should give you all the information. But just quickly, the Toronto All-Star Big Band is coming Sunday, December the 1st at 2 p.m. Ticket prices, adults $31.25, youth $17.15. And this is a fundraiser for the Friends of Roselawn so that they can get some working capital. They've been doing things out of their own pocket and spending their own money. There needs to be things done for photocopying and brochures and everything. It's extensive. On December the 8th, it's also a Sunday at 3 p.m. Street Haven Women's Choir and North 44th Ensemble of the Toronto Choral Society. This is Christmas music, get in the spirit of the season. These are big events and will be sold out in Toronto in a heartbeat. So if you would like to see some great things, please come and visit. The Roselawn Center, support Friends of Roselawn. And one more, Twilight Jazz Ensemble featuring Juliet Dunn and Peter Shea. That's Sunday, December the 15th at 2 p.m. And tickets are available by calling the box office. So please support Friends of Roselawn, the Roselawn Center, and enjoy some great holiday spirit music. Thank you very much. On that point. Now, if I can ask staff a question,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Chris, I guess. Chris, I had the opportunity to ride for about an hour with a farmer on his 4-wheel drive vehicle through the mud roads of Ward 4, which, by the way, we aren't maintaining for the last 2 years. Quite evident if you were on that vehicle. So my question is, why aren't we maintaining them? Are we not maintaining them? And I would like if you could bring something back to the next meeting and we find out. We used to grade, we used to cut the weeds on the side, trim back the branches. If you guys have seen the farm equipment now is very large. These roads are small anyways, and with the trees growing in, it's hard to get equipment down there. And this is the only way for those farmers to access their fields and take their crops off. We have a group of 4-wheelers that go in there and destroy those roads every time it rains. And we need to maintain them so that the farmers can get into their fields and get their crops off. They could not do it on Holloway Bay Road that we share with Fort Erie. You could not get a tractor and the wagons down there to take the crops off the situation it's in right now. So if you could bring a report back on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Bodner. Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bodner. Yes, I'll converse with staff and we can get some numbers and details and get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. That's fine, Councillor? The only thing I have to add, Ron, is I have a question for Councillor Steele. You know, it may be really neat if you can actually get his grandfather to read a story at the Doors Open at Roselawn. He's probably roaming around somewhere up there. Further new business, we have next, we have Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just couldn't remember what file folder I put this in. But this is good news. If you'll remember at the last council meeting, I asked Ron for an update on my request for an advanced green at the Mellenby Bridge. And I've been after that for quite a while and finally got some positive news from the region. And it says, we have looked at our latest traffic counts and can appreciate the long queue lengths for southbound lefts when the Main Street Bridge is up. Given the updated information regarding the delay in the proposed development, we will be including this intersection improvement. Now, this is the key word, for consideration. I don't want consideration. I want it, but it's just for consideration in our 2014 Traffic Signal Improvement Program. And this will include providing an advanced green for the southbound left turn movement, which will require an addition of a new pole, replacement of the southbound signal heads, and installation of a new detector in the left turn lane. So at budget time, gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Barrick, don't forget this intersection. I want that in the 2014. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. It's one of those or else's. Thank you, B. Councillor Butters.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two quick announcements. On October 25th, Friday night, the incredible Moonlight Madness yard sale to help support the Port Colborne Feline Initiative and spay neuter programs. Money stays in Port Colborne. Happens. There'll be groups of us there Friday during the day accepting donations. So if you're junking out your attic or your cellar or your back room, we're happy to accept donations of used items. That yard sale starts on the Friday night, continues through on Saturday, and we'll have like a baked table, and it's just, it's organized chaos, and it's a lot of fun, and it raises money for a good cause. So help us out. November 2nd, it's at St. Pat's Church Hall here in Port Colborne. November 2nd, there's going to be a murder mystery dinner theater night. Mayor Lance Goodaway is featured in the play, which is specifically written for Port Colborne. Should be incredibly wonderful, and somebody in this room is actually one of the actors in that play. Tickets are available at Harmony on West. It's going to be a wonderful night, $25 a person. Good dinner, vegetarian dinner is also available. And so if you care to join us, you can give me a call, go to Harmony on West. Tickets are going fast. It's going to be a wonderful night. So that's also at St. Pat's Church Hall, November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. And possibly for your Midnight Madness, you can consider approaching Mr. Smith and having him donate his computer. I think members of council would appreciate that. Members of council, any further, I can see that smirk on Ron's face. Members of council, any further new business or councillors' items? With none, members of staff, any updates? Nothing? You guys are all good? Chief, you're fine?
I think so, Your Worship. I sent a memo out to council with regards to the Emerald Ash issue in the city, and the individual involved has been dealt with, and it is going to be on the city's website tomorrow morning.
Great, thank you, Chief. And before I forget, Chief, I do want to thank yourself and as well as your staff for the day, Fire Prevention Day and Safety Day that you put on at the Fire Hall. Great turnout. A lot of kids taking a lot of fun inside and out. I think Councillor Steele would have been appropriate to put into the OPP car. I'm not sure how long he would have lasted, but it was a great day, and I know he had a lot of volunteers as well as staff out there, so thank you. It was a great day had by all. So with that, members of council, we're now going to move on to the adoption of the minutes, and these minutes are the 22nd meeting regular of committee, dated September 23rd, 2013. If I can have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Doucette, Councillor Bodner, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to the items requiring separate discussion. We're going to start off with item 4. Councillor Danch.
And I do this for the mayor. Department of Community and Corporate Services, Community Services Report number 2013-34, subject Community Services Program Delivery and Operations at the Vale Health and Wellness Center. That council receive this report as an information and continues to support community services staff as it develops year-round recreation and special event programs and services for the residents of Port Colborne.
Thank you, Councillor Danch. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Kenny. The reason why I asked for this to be lifted this evening is a perfect segue was earlier when we had the YMCA make their presentation and the successes that the warm side has been having. I say the warm side because I'm referring to the pool, all that the YMCA has under their watchful eye. The pool, the fitness area, of course, the gymnasium that they look after has been a great success, especially with the membership and the activities that they're providing. And I thought it would be a perfect opportunity for Harry, through this report, to give that of which Harry looks after, which is the cold side, the 2 rinks, the running track, and of course the bocce club. And with that said as well, not only inside, but also outside with the baseball fields and the soccer fields and recreation trails, and all things that happen at the Land Sports Complex. Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the members of council and staff. Well, when we moved in February, we actually had basically hit the pavement running, and we haven't stopped since then. I think you can appreciate that in the first 6 to 7 months of operation, the Valley Health and Wellness Center, obviously with the anchor there being the Y and the rest of the tenants coming on board, we actually forged a pretty good relationship with them. We're currently hammering out an operations plan that's going to be a collaborative with all the tenants, primarily the Y, but it's going to involve all the tenants. And we're continuously working with all the tenants that are in the Valley Health and Wellness Center. Obviously, from February through till the first summer months, we're going through all the usual things a new building goes through with all the warranty items and issues of that concern. But it didn't really phase us in terms of participation rates, in terms of offering opportunities for the community and anyone else that wanted to use the Valley Health and Wellness Center, not just within the complex, as the mayor alluded to, the rest of the complex as well. We've had a very busy run at it. We hosted Lakeshore Catholic graduation, which was a tremendous success, and they've actually booked it again for next year. We're also looking at various venues indoors with a trade show that's also been tentatively booked right now, and working out the details with our operations staff as to what we need to do to facilitate that further. We've got an array of programs on board that really complement what the Y has been doing. And one of the things that they touched on in terms of the partnerships and the agreement that we have currently with them, as far as the 4, I guess, major programs that the city was really responsible in supporting. The Piranha Swim Team, the water polo program, which the Y has embraced for us, has really worked out well. And the basketball. Well, basketball was an added feature to that, actually, which worked out really well for Colborne basketball. The House League program is really going to benefit from using that facility on recurring Saturdays. We're just getting in the throes of looking at tournaments as well. So there's a lot of stuff that is really kind of being forged out. Our program offerings, obviously you can see in the report, we, for the first time, first kick at the cat, so to speak, we've really rolled out an ambitious program, and I would say it's about 70% success rate right now, which is good. We have in excess of 100 plus participants, and we've got program instructors that are really keen to work with the community and members that are joining those programs. One of the features of when we moved into Valley, obviously, and with the transition, we were really aggressive with online port, and if you're not familiar with that, that's an online service that really the city's had for a number of years, but we've taken it to another level where we're trying to expand its use in the community as far as online services, scheduling, programming, bookings, everything that we can do to facilitate the community's needs on a higher level as far as customer service through an online process, whether it's ice bookings, whether it's park bookings, anything of that nature. We're working through that program right now with measurable success. It's like any software application. We have some glitches behind the scenes, but we have good support from the administration, the administrators of the program that help us keep going forward with what we're able to offer. As far as rolling into our first season of operation with winter sports, Port Colborne Minor Hockey, the largest obviously user of our ice program. I know that they've expanded their registration rates, if I'm not mistaken. What percentage-wise? I forget what it was. Over 400 kids this year? Yeah. And not only that, but I think any available ice, if there is any right now, will probably go to Port Colborne Minor Hockey, just as a word to the wise. But again, all the traditional users are in place. We're in max participation rate. We're now looking at booking the tournaments, obviously, that are recurring themes for us, as well as other events and activities. And we're also really continuously working with the Y to facilitate other partnerships in terms of what they may not be offering. What is it that we can access on the warm side? As much as we want to, you know, obviously stay on our side, that's not really the case. We want to integrate as much as we can. And they're very receptive to that, dialogue with our staff and everybody else working with us. We've had good success that way in terms of bridging our relationship with them. And if they have any downtime, if it's something that we can offer, then they're willing to listen to us and allow us in access to the warm side of the facility. The one really unique partnership we've forged out is something as simple as offering, you know, communities birthday parties, which are traditionally booked through you know, arenas and whatever the case may be, where families come in and book some arena time. But we've combined it with the Y so that they have access to the pool, to the swimming, as well as to the ice arena. So it's kind of a collaborative that way, as well as using the Golden Puck Community Room, which really is our focal point as far as booking that facility. And again, that hasn't come without its challenges, obviously, where we've had to expand our program base into the Roseland Center as well, which is actually a benefit to us. We're expanding on that as much as we can there with some of the arts and cultural programs that I think we can expand on. And there are going to be other opportunities that we can expand on in the community, not just only at the Valley Health and Wellness Center, but throughout other parts of the community, including the marina for that matter. So I'll entertain any questions or anything that you may have.
Well done, Harry. Members of council, any questions or comments? Councillor Steele?
Thank you, Worship. Just more of a comment through you to Harry and his staff. Thank you on behalf of Port Colborne Minor Hockey. As Harry alluded to, our numbers are up considerably again this year. We're up over 400 kids. Of more significance is we're ahead of the curve from the previous years of our TIC, or beginners program. We generally have anywhere from 40 to 55 kids enrolled in that program. Last year we were at 42. This year we're at 77 and counting. So we're going to be, we actually have to go to six teams this year, but we're going to do things a little bit differently with regards to how that program will operate. And Harry and I had a good discussion last week on that. As I mentioned earlier, we've introduced our girls program. We already have indication that next year, with regards to Port Colborne, Wainfleet, Fort Erie, and Welland, we may have, we're really going to try hard, is that we'll have an Adam, a Pee Wee, and a Bantam team, as opposed to just one Pee Wee team, so we're going to expand there. We see our numbers growing in all of our divisions. Our midget program this year has 5 teams, a midget rep team, a midget AE rep team, and 3 local league teams. We haven't had 5 teams of that caliber in years. So it bodes well for our coaches and our volunteers, and especially our players. The overwhelming comment that we hear from parents, why they're now starting to come out, especially young families, is that it's a one-stop shop. They have kids in swimming, they have kids in basketball. The parents and the families are members of the YMCA, so they can come out and they can drop their child off, they can walk the track, they can go to the Y, they can have their siblings in the gymnasium in the YMCA programming. Bringing it all together compared to the days of 2 rinks that were how many miles apart and a pool stuck in the middle, it was chaos for a lot of parents, me being one of those with 3 boys. You know, kids at each rink, one in the middle of the pool or at a gymnasium playing sports there, where now it's pretty much all under one roof. It helps us, and I think in helping us, we can help make the facility even better by, as Harry says, we're booking more ice, and we're looking at expanding some programs again this year, and we're trying to gather up as much ice that's available within the proper times as possible. So Harry's staff has done a great job with Linda Nisley, our ice scheduler, and through her and her conveners putting these programs together. But you know, this one-stop shop thing, people, you build it, they will come. I think the Y hit the nail on the head tonight. Over 2,000 members, where they thought they were going to have like 1,300. So it's true, and we're seeing it and we're just one cog in the wheel here, and we're seeing it at our level. So let's hope that continues. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Well stated. Members of council, any further comments or questions? Just quickly, Harry, great job. Great job on the report. Very robust. For the most part, it really shows how all-inclusive and diverse the activities are. You do make mention of other areas, which is great. That menu doesn't just include the Valley Center, but it also includes all the other areas of the city, the rec trails, the marina, the beaches, the parks, Roselawn, of course, Shirkston Shores, and working with Shirkston Shores on a consistent basis. It really shows how robust those activities are here in the city of Port Colborne. And with that, enhancing and sustaining a comfortable, active, vibrant lifestyle that our residents are accustomed to, but more so well into the future because of those investments and programs. More importantly, the programs. It's always nice to see the bricks and mortar, but it's how it breathes that makes it count. And I want to thank you and your staff, as well as I thank the YMCA staff, but yourself and your staff as well, for everything that you're doing over at the center and across the entire city, but also, Billy, to yourself as well, to your organization and all the organizations that work with you on a daily basis that ensure a lot of these other programs like minor hockey, minor basketball, minor soccer, minor baseball, and of course with Roselawn, with the different activities they have happening over there, and of course all the volunteers that really make it happen. A great thing. Thanks goes out to them and an appreciation on behalf of the entire community, because that's what makes it click. And I think, as Janet said earlier, and as you stated, it's working. And for the most part, it's due to all those folks that are involved on a daily basis. So a great big thanks to all them, as well as yourselves. So great job to all. So with that, members of council, and no further questions or comments on this report, all those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6. Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry. Yeah, item 6.
Okay. Department of Planning and Development report number 2013-63, subject recommendation report for a zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14/05-13, 1937 Ramey Road. Recommendation is that the Council of the City of Port Colborne approves the zoning bylaw amendment attached hereto as Appendix A, rezoning the land from the existing EI extractive industrial zone to EI-373-H concrete product manufacturing holding. 2, that the city clerk is hereby authorized and directed to proceed with the giving of notice of passing of the bylaws in accordance with the Planning Act. 3, that pursuant to the provisions of Section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice of public meeting be required.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that recommendation, please? Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jack Kalinga is in the gallery and has asked to speak to this report. Is on our agenda to do so. So if Mr. Halinga
Thank you,
come
Councillor.
forward, thank you.
Members of council are fine with that? Okay, Mr. Halinga, come on up. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members in the audience, I count 7 local residential, individual residential properties represented. Maybe you could put your hand up and we can count how many are here. So that's the importance of this decision to us. I was the only one that had requested the notice of the recommendation and the planning report. I received it after 4 o'clock on Thursday, and I have a full-time job, so I worked Friday, so I didn't have a whole lot of time. I did give all councillors a heads up by sending them my comments on Sunday, and I don't want to provide any surprises. Firstly, as residents of Port Colborne, and many of us longtime residents, we all appreciate everyone's interest and efforts to attract industry to Port Colborne, and that includes staff, mayor, councillors, and other businesses, including Rankin Construction. The report was, with attachments, was 86 pages long. So it took a bit of time to go through. I believe it was Monday morning I sent out an email, and my first word in that email was imagine. I imagined what the region had prepared in their presentation, their video. I don't imagine, and I don't imagine any of the residents within the short frame of the proposed site, Snyder Road to Highway 3, and Highway 3 immediately south of that site, to see specially designed transportation vehicles, articulated trailers, articulated carriages at the end of those, tying up the streets, and this is just a one-way, one-exit street in front of their house on a regular basis, a transportation requirement requiring, in a lot of instances, escort vehicles and police escorts. I mentioned there are two main concerns that I have. One is the class of industry that's proposed, and an appropriate bylaw and appropriate zoning designation, which I believe the Planning Department report does not reflect, and the other is the site plan agreement. The region referred to the MOE guidelines D6. They are on page 128 and 129 to 131 of your minutes, or your, I guess, your agenda for this meeting. And if I could, I will read from D6. The ministry shall not be held liable for municipal planning decisions that disregard ministry policies and guidelines. When there is a contravention of ministry legislation, ministry staff shall enforce compliance. I phoned the Ministry of the Environment this morning. I also contacted them by email and asked them what they would class this industry as, and the reply was Class 3. Class 3, according to the procedure D161, says that there is a separation requirement, a minimum of 300 meters, and an influence area up to 1,000 meters. This is also in the Region of Niagara Planning Department response to the input request from the Planning Department. This should not be a surprise. And it doesn't affect only the buildings, it affects also the potential conflict, and a potential conflict includes building lots, which there is one. Randy is the last house on Snyder Road, just north of him. Immediately opposite this site is a building lot. And it also includes other potential conflicts not associated with lot usage. That conflict, in this case, seriously, could be traffic and access to the roads. The intersection of Snyder Road and Highway 3 is an uncontrolled intersection at present. The Planning Department has opted to not require studies prior to this request for rezoning. Normally, that is requested in advance of a rezoning report and a recommendation. Your engineering department did suggest that a traffic study is required. The intersection on the northeast side is a resident. You want to put your hand up? The northeast. Okay, I'll address the southeast first. A child with special needs, sensory issues, an autistic child, and they don't know what is happening when a big vehicle comes out of that road, and they want to come out and see it. And the other, on the northeast, a hearing impaired child who freaks out at loud noises because they are fitted with hearing assistance. So they have to wait for a school bus at this intersection, and yet it's proposed to put huge, not small, not light, huge vehicles with specially designed carriages and police escorts going out of that and around that intersection. To me, one other very important factor is that is haulage off-site, and the ministry, in their reply to my email, they also suggested that the policy include the transportation of raw materials as well. Aggregate required to build about 100-foot beam is about a truckload, about 20 tons of stone aggregate to build a beam. That's one dump truck load. And yet it has to be hauled away by special equipment. Also required, reinforcing steel, sand, approximately half as much as the aggregate, cement aggregates, cement additives, all are required to be brought in as well. So it's not just crush some stone and put it together, compact it together. It takes a lot more to put a facility together to build concrete beams. One of the other issues that I have a personal, I've made it quite clear on at the last meeting, was the site plan agreement. I've been told, oh, the site plan agreement doesn't really apply to Pit 1. However, in the site plan agreement, it specifically says, as a condition of licensing for extraction, the site development plan in 1982 referenced the site plan agreement between the city and the quarry. That same note was on the 1992 license under the Aggregate Resources Act. It's also on the first page of the site development plan in the 2007 license, which turned that original, the 1992 site development plan, to the, I forget the Ontario number, but commonly known as Rankin Construction. This is not a surprise to anyone that there's a site plan agreement on that property, what those site plan requirements are. The city, or the clause, there is a clause that says the rehabilitation program may be amended. It does not say that it can be used for something else. If it can't be used for recreational water, then come up with an ecologically friendly and compatible solution, because that word is used in that agreement, a compatible, environmentally friendly restoration or rehabilitation. Should not say restoration because it can't be turned back to agriculture. A rehabilitation plan that is suitable and compatible. The ministry requires that the separation follow D6 and D6-1, and there are 6 or 7 people here that are within the 300 meters of a Class 3 designation, and then it doesn't matter what zoning is applied to it. If it's E1 concrete production, that just doesn't fit. Light industrial might fit, except that you can't put anything into that zone because you can't put concrete production in a light industrial zone because it's not the zoning that designates the separation, it is the operation that goes in it. let's get on with attracting businesses, attracting jobs to Port Colborne. Let's put them in the right place with the correct separation. We have industrial land. Yes, it needs a little bit of work, but it has a proper zoning. It has all the amenities, the 3 requirements for this industry, for transportation. It has shipping, it has rail, it has road transportation to a controlled intersection. It has utilities, it has natural gas, and it has high voltage power, and it has, the city is using, or the city is currently undertaking with the region a servicing plan. It may take a little longer to implement all of a complete servicing plan, put in the servicing required to service this industry. The city and the mayor should talk to this company that is planning to come in and show them what that site has, the already zoned site, and get them to set up and become an anchor for an industrial site that can be developed for the remaining properties can be developed for a whole lot of other industries as well. And following that, let's get on with the rehabilitation of pit number 1 to something that we can all agree on and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halenga. Members of council, any questions or comments to the presenter? If none, thank you, Mr. Halenga. I appreciate it. I'm going to ask Stephen to comment on the latter comments by Mr. Halenga with respect to the lands, in particular the prompting by the city to ask Mr. Rankin and his group to consider making his land available for future developments. Mr. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for the opportunity. In fact, the lands that I believe were being raised were some of the initial sites that were considered by the proponent, that actually attracted them initially to the city of Port Colborne. The reality associated with those sites, and reports have come forward in this council chamber even over the past few months, as recently as this summer, the realities associated with the site in question, the alternate site in question, would be the servicing cost as well as the servicing process. There is an environmental assessment requirement, as well as which has realities in terms of timelines. The environmental assessment may be optimistic to say a 1-year timeline. There are realities as well in terms of dollars, and the dollars are specific to water and wastewater. The report that was presented to this council in the summer indicated a budget cost which would still need to be council supported in principle, but the dollars still need to come from somewhere in a future budget year of $7 to $8 million. So not only do we have a 1-year timeline before a shovel could get in the ground if the environmental assessment went forward favorably, there is the dollars, the reality that the council would need to deal with. That would be a local City of Port Colborne cost, not a regional cost. So there is a reality associated in terms of the dollars. That did lead city staff to have a discussion with Rankin Quarries to try to find a creative, an alternate solution that could leverage existing land, existing servicing to be able to meet the timelines and ultimately to keep Port Colborne in the running for this investment. At this point in time, we believe there is only one site in Port Colborne that can keep us in the running for this 100 plus jobs, high quality manufacturing jobs, and that's what led us to approach Rankin Construction and to see if there was an opportunity to work with that company to house this new manufacturing facility at that location.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Members of council, to the report. I have Councillor Butters. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions. Perhaps this one could, through you to Stephen Thompson. I was wondering if there was ever a calculation or determination made of what the servicing would be for just this company's needs as opposed to the big picture of servicing the, that industrial land.
Mr. Thompson? Chris, just to give you a heads up, I'm maybe coming to you next. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, thank you. I was about to
Give
say
it your
the
best
same
shot.
thing. In terms of the realities of servicing the alternate site in question, it is, I'm going to say it's approximately 1.7 kilometers to get the servicing to that approximate location. The environmental assessment costs remain pretty consistent across the board. The actual trenching, digging, piping, pumping, power, those sorts of costs do not vary that much based upon the volumes, to my understanding, unless engineering has different information or a different perspective on how it would be approached.
Thank you, Stephen. Chris?
So you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Butters. The initial development has a lump sum attached to it, the pumping stations, the trunk water mains. Whether we feed one industrial land or 4 or 5 parcels, that is a large upfront cost that's there no matter how many fit onto those particular parcels. That being said, there is really no economy in going to just one, servicing one land at this time because of the distance that we have to go to, the pumping stations that are involved, the force mains involved. Those will all have to be in place whether we serve one parcel on that proposed lands or multiple parcels.
So you're telling me that it's like an all or nothing kind of deal?
Not necessarily all or nothing.
If I can just interject, you're talking through the
Yes, I am talking
chair
to
here.
you, sir.
I think where Chris is going with this is at the end of the day, to make an investment to a piece of property for one investment, which would be quite an investment in itself. But then as that property, as you know, we have a lot of land out there to be serviced.
Yes.
And to make an investment and then to have to make years after that a second investment with a second trench right beside the original investment you made wouldn't be prudent. I think the key is to make the original investment so that it actually services the entire parcel of lands versus one piece of land. And I think that's where Chris was going with that. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's where you're going with that.
Well,
Councillor?
then I guess that would suggest then that you would have to have several industries all ready to go into that area to make it ever serviceable. If that's the rationale, then you'd have to have a great number of industries ready to go there.
Well, the intent is to have all those lands taken up eventually, and of course to have those lands serviced to accommodate all those industries that we would hope in the future would take full advantage of those lands, no different than they took advantage of the lands on the west side of the city, such as JBL, and those investments were made back in the late 70s and 80s, which gave us the opportunity to attract those businesses. The same can be said for the east side of the canal as well.
Okay.
As you know, Councillor, the industrial land study that we entertained last year and passed here at Council identified not only the lands, but the $26 million that it would take to service those lands.
Yes, I do recall. Can I move on to my next question? Mr. Halinga brings up the classification of this facility as a Class 3 industry, and I don't really think that that's addressed in this report. And actually, it says it's like a Class 2. So I want to know, through you to whoever can answer the question, how is that reconciled with Mr. Halinga's information from the Ministry of Environment, who decides these things, as opposed to the report that we have before us?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Butters. The D6 guidelines is a document, it's just a guideline. It's not a policy. It's nothing that is a hard, fast, true piece of information that the city must actually uphold. It's just that it's a guideline. And so those determinations are actually made by the ministry staff to consider whether a facility is a Class 1, Class 2, or Class 3. That determination was not made by ministry staff. Neither was it made by the region of Niagara. The information would have to be given to the ministry to actually make a formal determination of what classification that would be. To my knowledge, that information is not available to be given to the ministry because you need to know hours of operation, the type of manufacturing you're going to actually be doing, what that actually entails, is there any emissions, dust, noise, that all needs to be determined by the ministry to actually come up with that classification. Then when you know what that classification is, that guideline also says what are the recommended distances to have. Class 2 is a 70-meter setback. Class 3 is 300 meters. But there are studies that you would need to do to actually mitigate that, to reduce that number. One thing I would like to make known is the distance from the south property line to the nearest residential home is 127 meters. That property to be rezoned is 300 meters by 500 meters. Through the site plan process, it may exceed this 300-meter recommended guideline that the ministry actually has in place. Through the site plan process, we may actually site that property further away than the recommended 300 meters.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. Councillor?
Thank you. So that kind of brings me to my dilemma here, because what I'm being asked to do here is to make a determination on this zoning when I have no idea what this facility will look like, what it'll sound like, what it could smell like, whether there's going to be dust, noise, more so than what's there already. So in essence, I'm kind of being blindfolded and asked to okay this when I have no idea what this is to look like, and neither do the neighbors, for that matter. So that's part of my dilemma in making this decision is I'm being asked to make that decision, and there's an absence of information in my opinion.
If I can have that addressed, Councillor?
Certainly.
Mr. Aquilina?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What the report, the thrust of the report, and the reason why certain studies were not required aside from the traffic study, is that one thing that you can't lose sight of is the fact that Pit 1 is still in operation. There's a crusher, there's heavy machinery, there's a lot of truck traffic on there. It's not quiet by no means. So the whole picture would have to then be determined by the ministry, knowing all of those factors, then knowing what was proposed, and then making a determination on the classification of that facility. We would require the site plan agreement to address the need for a traffic study and the proper siting of that facility, taking into consideration what internal road networks would remain and what would be proposed in the future. Rankin mentioned the need of exiting onto Schneider Road. There's a possibility not to use Schneider Road. You can use Ramey Road. You can use the actual existing entrance. Those are the things that would be determined through the site plan agreement process, the amending process.
So if I may, it's not simply a done deal with the rezoning. The rezoning just allows them to proceed with putting a project forward that would determine site plan control.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. What's recommended is to actually place a holding provision and the need to actually have a site plan amendment done, which will then come back to council to lift the holding provision before you would see a shovel in the ground.
Councilor?
Okay, which does bring me to the Snyder Road issue. I think that is a really bad way to come in and out of that facility if this thing goes forward. I want to see something else looked at for sure, not Snyder Road. We talked about the unopened road allowance of Ramey Road, which runs behind the storage facility. That to me is a better place to be looking. If you have to build a ramp up to the top of the pit, you can build it in one place or you can build it in another. So I think Snyder Road definitely should be off the table in this instance.
If I can just interject, and Dan, from your earlier comments, that would be dealt with during the site plan control process?
Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. So I know I see Dory's here, and I don't see the Levere's here, but some of the folks and the folks that live on the corner, the new folks that are, I know you've been here for a while, but the folks behind you, I think, just moved here. I seen you guys put that big fence up a couple of years ago, but that's the concerns that you guys, I know, have with respect to truck traffic. Oh, and yeah. Those issues can be dealt with during the site plan control process, as confirmed by planning.
Okay, so if I could continue. Okay. Now, I want to go to the rehab of Pit 1, and I understand that Pit 1 predates the licensing with the M&R, and that it under the M&R agreement, it doesn't have to be, it's not required to be rehabilitated. But with the agreement with the City of Port Colborne, it is included in a rehabilitation. I'm going to gaze into my own crystal ball because the water, wastewater amount of money that it takes to bring in that service to the area that we talked about prior, and that immense amount of money. I was wondering if there's been a calculation of what it's going to take to bring water, wastewater service to that from the 140 and Highway 3, where I'm assuming it has to come from, to service in Pit 1.
Mr. Lee? You might want to add who's going to pay for that as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Butters, at this point, there hasn't been any estimates on those costs. As far as, first of all, because of where it's going to be situated and the siting of it, those would be critical, and that would determine some of those costs. There is currently sanitary sewer systems on Main Street, running out to the east limit of the property, butting the old Augustine Farms, and then the water runs north and south along Highway 140.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris.
So there's
Stephen, do you want to comment on it as well, in terms of their, in terms of who's going to take on that project?
In terms of, Mr. Mayor, through you, in terms of the internal servicing, that may be a question better posed to the proponent that is here this evening. I know they've looked at various different options in terms of transportation access. They've also looked at different options in terms of servicing. This is an area of expertise for the company, and they could probably speak to it better than anyone else here.
Mr. Rankin, did you want to comment on the internal servicing of the property? Tom, if you just want to come on up here, please.
Last week, and I had a commitment to play golf on today, so
Just want to press the button there.
we're up at Brantford, so we made it here anyway. But, pardon my clothes. But anyway, no, we've looked at the cost, and I didn't bring my file with me, but it's quite substantial, but that has to be paid for by the developer, you know, so it'd be between us and him sort of thing. Me being an engineer, used to be the design and construction engineer for the city of Niagara Falls, and worked for the city of St. Catharines for 5 years, so I've worked out the cost, and we've included that in our estimate of the service and cost. We've given it to the owner, so they're well aware of that. The other thing, there seems to be a big issue on the, you know, the people wanted to go out on Snyder Road, but my son's been looking at this, and we feel we could accommodate them out the driveway we have right now, quite frankly. They didn't want to interfere with any trucks coming in and out, but we think we could probably put barricades and make sure there'd be no interference with traffic. The quarry's pretty big, so we think if we're really stuck, we could probably get them out. They wanted to go out to Snyder Road, but we think that we could take them out the other way without any interference to our trucks coming in and out. So that's something that we'd have to convince this company. I think we could. The other thing, we've been in a number of the plants. John's been in a couple. I've only been in one. I can tell you can eat off the floor. They're that clean. They're that spotless. They're not noisy. There's little or no noise at all. And they are absolutely spotless. And the comment John McClellan and I made, you could eat off the floor in the plant. That's how clean they are. And as I said, there's little or no noise. My quarry makes more noise in it right now than they'll make.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rankin.
Okay,
Councillor?
so I didn't get a number, but obviously it's a big number for internal servicing. Sorry?
I don't want to quote that. It was under 500. I think it was 350,000 in that range.
Okay, so under 500,000.
Okay.
The city doesn't pay. Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Councillor?
So I guess my point would be with that amount of money being invested into the servicing of that facility, whoever pays for it, it would say to me that Pit 1 would never, ever be rehabilitated. It would also say to me that it opens the door for additional industrial activity in Pit 2. And if that's the case, because 30 years ago it was what it was, and now 30 years later it is what it is, then to me somebody needs to have, you know, the guts to stand up and say, you know what, that's really the long-range plan here, is to do this in Pit 1 and eventually service to Pit 2. And you know what, people need to know what they're ultimately going to deal with. And if that's the case, then I'm going to put this suggestion forward, that land be swapped to be rehabilitated. And I'm talking about the upper, I'm going to say the top of the quarries from pit 1 to pit 2 on the south side, and that it's within the realm of possibility to create a passive recreational area up on the top and make a taller berm. You can call it a green wall, you can call it whatever you want, and make that what is rehabilitated. Because just the way my crystal ball tells me, pit 1 is just the tip of the iceberg here. And people who live there, I think, have a right to know what's in store because they live there. We also have a responsibility. Part of our responsibility in controlling development is also protecting the people who own land and their property values. So if we're going to do something, then let's do it with our eyes wide open instead of half closed.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I'm going to leave it at that, but I also have something to amend
Sure.
the recommendation at the end, but I want to hear from other people.
Thank you, Councillor. And I just want to allow Mr. Aquilino to comment on pits 2 and 3 with respect to, well, I guess the question would be, if there was anything else done besides what's already zoned for those 2 pits, very similar to pit 1, would an application for rezoning have to be made for those pits as well?
Mr. Mayor, through you, that is correct. The present property is zoned aggregate industrial. The zoning before us actually allows concrete precast manufacturing. Any new use that is proposed on that property would be under the same process, a zoning bylaw amendment, and may go beyond that to require an official plan amendment as well. But definitely a rezoning would be required in the future. One of the directions in the report through that site plan amending process would be to actually remove the need for the rehabilitation of pit 1, or an alternative, as you mentioned, Councillor Butters, to have some other sort of rehabilitation. You can't put that facility on the ground when that site plan agreement from 1982 contemplates passive recreation. So that's why the need to have an amendment is in place, and that is what we're recommending to have done.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilino. Further questions or comments, members? Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at the report and I'm looking at the recommendation here. Staff recommends that the zoning bylaw amendment be granted with holding provision in place, with the condition that the holding provision will be removed once the 1982 site plan agreement has been amended to the satisfaction of the City of Port Colborne and Port Colborne Quarries. I believe that the only way that this can be dealt with is to allow this to go ahead with the holding provision. Holding provision gives us the power to change what is necessary or not allow it to go on at all if it becomes a major problem. But until we know that, and until we pass this, by not passing this, we're blocked. We've got nothing. Okay? Once we put this in, we can at least negotiate with Port Colborne Quarries, and maybe we can turn a certain area into a passive area, passive water area. But this particular building could be inside that quarry and placed in a certain area that would not hurt anyone, would be way within the guidelines, if not, you know, like instead of 300, it might be 400 or 500 meters, who knows? Okay, but in this holding provision and negotiations is what allows us to do it. So, after all I'm concerned, I have to support this recommendation to be able to move on. Whether we do it or not, whether we get this industry in there or not, doesn't matter to me. I think we need this to be able to move on and find out whether we're going to get it or whether we should or whether we should not. All we've got now is a yes and a no, and we've got nothing in between. There may be some grounds in between, and this allows us to find that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's hard to expand on what Councillor Butters has said. She did it very well and touched on most of the concerns I had. But I think one of the one of the main concerns is that once this industry is there, and once that sewer and water has been run to there, that is, for all intent and purpose, an industrial zone long after both pit 2 and 3 are exhausted. It will never be rehabilitated. It will be an industrial zone and other industries in there. So that is, I believe, a reality and something that, you know, if this goes through, is simply going to happen. And I'm happy to hear Mr. Rankin say that there's a possibility to go out the main entrance of the quarry if this does become a reality, because that's the only thing that makes sense. If indeed the trucks are as big as Jack has alluded to, and if you're carrying a beam or a wind turbine, it has to be that, a stand, it has to be that big. Who the heck can think it could ever turn from Snyder Road onto Highway 3 anyways? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So yes, it should go out somewhere at a controlled intersection, which would be 140 area out there. You know, I'd certainly love to see that site plan control and that original agreement from 82 be massaged somehow to bring it up to whatever we can live with in this day and age, or if this gets turned down, to actually bring it forward as presented. So I'd be interested to see, and I would certainly second Councillor Butter's amendment. I have an idea somewhat what it's about, so I'll wait to hear from other.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments on the report? Councillor Butters, the floor is yours.
Okay, I wonder, I have a question through you to the planner. So to include more specific language of the rehabilitation on the, well, I'll call it the top of the quarry, does that need to be in this stage now?
Or Mr. Aquilina.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Butters, it doesn't need to be actually directed back to staff. Following your recommendation, I'm not sure if it actually, you want the agreement, site plan agreement, to come back to council for approval?
Yes.
So through that process, all those details would be presented to council for ultimate approval if your recommendation is upheld.
So if I can have that as an amendment to this motion, that we actually, that council see the site plan agreement before it's moved forward with?
Well, I have some language here I can read
Go ahead,
out.
Councillor, the floor is yours.
Okay, I would amend the recommendation to include that the required amending site plan agreement needed to lift the holding be reviewed and approved by City Council, and that the neighboring properties be notified and engaged in the process.
Mr. Aquilina, any comment on that?
Mr. Mayor, it is really the pleasure of council. Typically right now when we have a site plan agreement, depending on what the actual magnitude of that development is, we try to engage the public, the neighborhood. There is no formal requirement for us to do so. It's just something that we like to do. However, it would actually have a direction from council for us to actually engage the public, and then we just need some parameters as to what type of engagement the council is looking for, and in cooperation with Mr. Rankin as well.
Now, just a question to that, Dan. That site plan control would obviously be prompted upon the building location, building size, so on and so forth. And then, of course, as we have in the past, say, for example, with Young Bunslauer, or when Casco was brought here back in the 80s, there can be a public meeting that shows exactly what it is, where it's going to go, and of course the traffic patterns and things of that nature.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. We can do that. We can engage the public. We can actually present the plans once they're known to us. The only difference is, right now at present, the site plan amending process is actually undertaken by staff. Staff gives the clearance, and yourself and the clerk sign the agreement. So it would be a deviation from the actual site plan bylaw we have that actually would then allow council the ultimate approval of that agreement and actually engagement with the public.
Councillor Butters, is that what you're looking for?
I'm looking for a process that brings it back to this council and engages the public in a meaningful way.
Okay, so just to cut to that chase, what you're looking for, and I don't want to put words in your mouth by no means, what you're looking for is a process that in fact has a public meeting, that engages the public, shows them, I'll use the words meat and potatoes of the project, the building, the location, the traffic, where it's going to go in, where it's going to go out, so on and so forth, And then, of course, with that, and taking into consideration the public input,
Yes.
a report on site plan will come back to council for our blessing, and then proceed from there.
And that all those neighbors be notified when that report will
Comes back
come
to
back,
council.
and have, access to that report.
Wonderful.
In a
Councillor
meaningful
Bodnar,
way.
you want to second that? That's fine. Okay, members of council, thank you, Councillor Butters. To that amendment, members of council, any questions or comments to the amendment? Staff, any comments or questions? With none? No questions? I see you thinking there, Ron. You're all right? Okay, Barb, you're okay?
Just one more
Go
question.
ahead.
Is it, can I just ask through you to Mr. Rankin, have you got a willingness to look at a different kind of rehabilitation out of Pit 1?
Mr. Rankin?
Well, I never put a lot of credence that, the rehabilitation plan was long before we got involved in the quarry.
Yes.
I just personally think it's silly because, to flood the quarry and, I know, for example,
Tom, you want to come on up here, please? Sorry about that.
Nobody knows. I want to get some commitment.
even though I'm an engineer and a contractor, I'm also a farmer. I own quite a bit of farmland in St. Albans. I do farm. Originally, I lived on a farm. And, for example, right now, if you have a lot of stagnant water, there could be mosquitoes breeding. I've got a horse on my farm right in St. Albans dying with West Nile disease from mosquito bites. Even though I take measures, and I probably do, I don't know if all farmers do this, but I stagnant water, I address it every year. I was told to put vegetable oil, it kills the larvae. Now, can you imagine if this whole quarry's flooded? Personally, I think sailboats look a lot nicer out on Lake Erie than in my quarry. So I never liked the plan to flood the quarry, believe me. It could be a hazard down the road. Mosquitoes could breed, stuff like that. So, down the road, I gotta look at, we haven't given a lot of thought to it, but address those issues. What's the best way to rehabilitate the quarry? I think the plan right now is really silly, quite frankly.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin.
Through you,
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rankin, don't go away, please. My question was, would you be open to looking at a way to rehabilitate the top side south of the quarry from Pit 1 to Pit 2? We'll just stay in that area.
We'd be open to anything. We would only be too happy to sit down with the neighbors, and if you come up with a good suggestion, we'd be all ears.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll hold you to it.
Just to add to that, Mr. Rankin has approached the city with some plans south of the property. That makes its way to Highway 3 as well as to 140 to the corner, I'm sure, as all of you know. So there are plans for that part of it, but
Yes, I'm looking more
west or east. Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments to the amendment? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? Back to the main motion. Are there any further questions or comments to the main motion as amended? With none, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. If I can now move on to item 9, Councillor Doucette. By the way, members of council, that was unanimous. I thank you for that.
Department of Engineering and Operations Engineering Division Report Number 2013-38, subject construction and paving a parking lot at the Valley Health and Wellness Center. That the Council of the City of Port Colborne award tender 2013-18A supply and place asphalt for a parking lot to Rankin Construction, Inc. of St. Catharines, Ontario, with a submitted tender price of $136,978. plus applicable taxes, and tender 2013-18B supply, place, and grade granular for a parking lot to Rankin Construction, Inc. of St. Catharines, Ontario, with a submitted tender price of $61,226, plus applicable taxes. Further, that a contract bylaw whereby the city enters into a contract agreement with the contractor be prepared, that the costs of tender 2013-18A and 2013-18B be financed from the roads development charges, the Valley Health and Wellness Reserve Fund, and the Valley Health and Wellness Center Stabilization Fund, all as outlined previously within this report.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Desmarais. I'm going to go to Mr. Lee now to explain what's happening, because this has been a hot topic throughout the community, especially when the Bees made it down the road in the playoffs last year and had seen cars parked from Highway 3 down to Quality Street. And we expect the Bees to make it to the finals this year, so it's probably going to happen again unless we do something about that parking lot. So with that said, Chris, want to enlighten us, please?
To you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of council. With this particular report, what we've brought forward is the costs involved to build 2 additional parking lots within the Valet Center. One of them, which is currently a stone parking lot without any delineation, will be paved if this report is approved. And the second one is actually taking a section of the turf area between the existing gravel portion and the berm to the far west, and that will involve a new parking lot as well, giving us somewhere in the vicinity of 290 additional parking spaces. That being said, staff has actually had conversations earlier today with Rankin Corporation, and they are eager to start if this was to be approved.
Great, thank you. As members of council know, with the excitement and of course the success of the Valley Center, a heck of a lot more parking is needed. So this is the reason for the report before you this evening. Questions or comments? Councillor Doucette, and Councillor Steele and Kenny.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I have received phone calls since last spring, especially once soccer started, as well as other games, the baseball and everything else. Everyone is saying that we need this parking. And I know I started asking about it during the summer. I am ecstatic about the fact that we're doing this. I'm ecstatic about the fact that we're going all the way to the berms, which adds that much more. And we need to get this done as soon as possible, and I'm glad to hear that Rankin is ready to go now, because that means it'll be done shortly.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to Mr. Lee. Chris, with regards to 18B, the additional $61,226 to extend it, how many spots are we getting out of that portion of the contract?
Mr. Lee.
To you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Steele. There's 290 in total, and essentially it's split between the two. So it's essentially a 50-50 split. So you're looking at approximately 140 extra lots.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you. So you're extending from the current pavement that's really just the roadway and one row of parking. So you're going to the end of the stone now, paving that. Then you're creating another lot the size of that stone area that exists today? Is that what I'm getting at?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Steele, that's correct.
Yeah, personally, and I'm there a lot, I don't think it's needed at this time. I think if we pave and properly line the existing stone area, I think you're going to get a lot more parking, because the problem when you go now, people are taking up 1, 2, and 3 spots with one vehicle because they don't properly park on stone. I was there on Saturday, and that's exactly what happened. I pulled in, and the guy beside me, nobody could park because he'd taken up the way he parked. The unfortunate part is that it is stone, it's not lined. I think building that many parking spaces for Easter Sunday, as the old saying goes, I think it's $61,000 we don't need to spend. I think if we pave the existing area now, we'll find that we'll alleviate the majority of problems. I've been there when House League opened, which is our biggest day of opening. Soccer, there was a soccer game going on. The Y was busy. the walking track was busy, there was still lots of parking in the main parking lots, not let alone this area. So for a few games during a year or a big event, to be quite honest, I think, and I know staff have talked about this, is to approach valet about across the street and putting in a stone area for overflow for certain events during the year. I just think at this time, spending $61,000 on building parking spaces that, yes, it's going to get people closer to the soccer field, to the ball field. However, is it just going to leave other spaces that are being used now empty? And that's a concern I have. So I'd rather see us pave what's there and not spend the $61,000 at this time and leave the grass, green area as it is, and then monitor from there. I think we need to live in this place for a while before we start spreading huge, big parking lots further. I can't see it. And I've been there when the slow pitch tournament came in from Niagara Falls, soccer fields were being used, there was people in the rinks, everything else. There was still parking available. There was parking available. I don't think we need to build convenience here. We need to build proper parking. It is a health and wellness center. If you got to walk a little extra, it shouldn't hurt you. I mean, you're there for exercise. So I'll wait till I hear from other councilors, but in my mind right now, I'd just rather see us pave what's there and not spend the $61,000.
Thank you. Councillor, I believe I had Councillor Kenny next.
Thank you, Worship. Reading the report, I was happy to see that the city, in their tender process, asked for really a donation, really, I guess would be, granting donation. I was happy to see that. It says here that bids from Rankin for both these things also contained a considerable donation and sponsorship. So that's great. So we went to the tender process. He came back. He came in at the lowest price. Chris, I'm really surprised at the second quote, though, the 18B. He's $57,000 cheaper, I guess, than any of the next lowest bid. And I kind of wondered how that would happen, $57,000. And he's still including a donation, which I think is great. And I think that's the way to do it. And so staff, thank you for making it that way. And I think that this is a good thing for all of us. But I would just like to know why the difference, and that big a difference in the bid. Thanks.
Mr. Lee.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Kenny, the big variation in the pricing is due to the generosity of the donation.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Further questions or comments? Members of council? Councillor Bodner, I see that hand going up. Go ahead.
So I guess the wild card in all this is that would somebody be as generous the next time if we had to do that? I kind of like Councillor Steele's idea of do what we might need right now and that extra. The stone lot across the way, we've talked about that since day one, I believe, just for an overflow emergency situation. That's not out of the question, but can I ask staff, has the owner been approached at all, even as a comment as to would they be receptive to a stone lot over there?
Mr. Howe?
Our direct discussion, Your Worship, on this matter is that there is nothing available, no consideration of anything for at least a year and longer because of changes in the structure and organization of the company.
Thank you. And we just to add a bit more to that, we have been trying to push Valley to, for lack of a better word, digress themselves of the properties that they have banked in Port Colborne for the past many decades, and of course for a good reason, because a lot of the properties, including that one across the street, had a lot of value attached to them, especially with respect to certain developments in that area, of course, residential. The second mention I do want to make, and I have to tell you, I did battle with the committee and staff about this very issue going back 3 or 4 years before the facility was actually built, and to some extent my worst fears were confirmed with respect to the parking situation over at the facility. And I say that, and I do frequent the facility myself at least 3 to 4 times a week all year round. And I have to say, I've heard, like Councillor Doucette has, from members of the public about their displeasure of the parking situation. And I quite frankly, especially in the summertime, not so bad in the wintertime when you don't have soccer and baseball happening. But in summertime, and especially with Harry's program, if it gets more successful, right now we have one rink operating. By the way, last year we never had both rinks operating because of the warranty situation we found ourselves in June. So it sort of subsided that challenge a bit. But with that rink running in June, July, and possibly two rinks running in June, July, plus the soccer fields, plus the baseball fields, plus the recreation trails, plus all the other activities that the Y has going on in and outside the facility, I've been there, and you're right, Bill, there's no question that the parking discipline is not there. I'll use that word. But at the same time, it's still very, very packed. And yes, I think we can use that whole parking lot, especially for 61,000, when in fact that price in 2 or 3 years from now can be 160,000. Having said that, and going to the you don't want to build a church only for Easter Sunday, I get that. But at the same time, when I seen those cars parked along Elizabeth Street during that Easter Sunday, so to speak, and had a nightmare of some little one, trucking it between two parked cars between Main Street and Kalali Street, that makes it a bit more eager. It makes you a bit more eager to get this parking lot built in a safer environment versus the environment that currently is there along Elizabeth Street. It's just not meant to park. People will park there. Let's face it. That's the reality of it. Whether they should or they shouldn't, they're still going to park there if they don't have more convenient parking on site. And I think that's what's crucial here, is to ensure that we provide safe parking on site versus the possibility, even if it's once a year, because that tragedy can happen that one time in the year, versus having that parking elsewhere. So personally, I would encourage council to support this, because quite frankly, the more this facility, this complex, the programs that we heard tonight are going to escalate and be enhanced, I think the parking is going to be needed. So, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Lee. Chris, so with regards to the question from Councillor Kenny, 18A and 18B with regards to our lowest bidder, which is Rankin Construction, it is contingent on accepting the two with regards to donation coming back to the city for the Valet Center.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Steele. No, each contract is separate and each one has its own donation value.
Councillor?
Okay, so there's something built into the two of them then?
Correct.
Okay. It was a little hazy as far as the way it read after that with regards to the naming rights. So each separate one has a dollar value. Do we know what the dollar value is? Can it be publicized, or I don't, or
no?
No, that's fine. It's no, then that's fine. I have no problem with that, because obviously we know. But can I ask a question? Is through your worship, we had 4 people come through for 18B and only 2, which both quoted 18A and B. Why didn't the other 3, the other 2 quote on 18A? Is there a reason?
Mr. Lee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Steele, the 2 that supplied pricing for the asphalt were asphalt supplying contractors who have paving plants of their own. The other 4 are excavation and grading contractors who would have had to gone and had a secondary contractor do the paving for them.
So they would have gone to Rankin or Brennan to come back and do the paving. Okay, so I mean, this is very difficult, because I all due respect to your worship, I really
subjective.
I'm having a hard time spending the 61 grand. I think it can, however, hearing with the valet, it could be a year. Do we need that year to figure out what we're doing? There is a considerable donation here, which is fantastic. We've talked about this from the committee days, which is what we wanted to see. We originally cut down the parking areas to come in within the allotted budget that the council the day wanted this project to come in at, where the original contract came in with about this size of parking lot, or maybe it was slightly smaller than what we're proposing today, but pretty close to what this is. So, we kind of are back at square one, and I think it's, I'm glad the way the financing is done. in essence, it's not costing, we're not throwing it on the tax rate. You know, we do have the funds set aside in the 3 accounts, so. And it's only because of the donation. I think I will bite my tongue on this one. I will support it, although I don't know, it's really tough. But anyways, again, I mean, it's not costing the taxpayer, just that I wish Valley could have come forward. I just don't understand why they can't say, yeah, take a few acres out of here, you can stone it, you fence it, and away you go. I think that would alleviate a lot of things, but that isn't the situation. Just park properly when you park at the new parking lot, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions or comments? Chris, just one question. Where's the handicap parking going to go? I got the diagram in front of me. Pardon me? Okay, that pointer. I've had requests from a few individuals that are handicapped and a few of the seniors that it will go right either there, Bob, or in the red part, right there. So it's close to the soccer fields. My second question, Chris, and I'll let you answer that.
As well as in the south limit in the blue.
Perfect. And my last question is, with respect to the I'll use the words, I guess, turnaround or the roundabout that you have by the soccer clubhouse. Is that it was a mess this year, and understandably, you know, there's a lot of work happening over there, so it's understandable that it's not going to look like new. But is that all going to be rehabilitated too? I happen to notice a lot of trees being taken out in that area. Of course, the new garage, warehouse, whatever you want to call it, is being erected there. Is that all going to be cleaned up and rehabilitated within the next year as well?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's part of the Parks Department's plan to clean that all up. They're dealing with the Emerald Ash Borer right now, and once those are done, they're actually starting the replanting program in some of the areas.
More trees?
Yes.
Great, thank you, thank you. Wonderful. Well, it's the shade, that they look forward to. Hopefully those trees, when they're planted, can be bigger than smaller, and that way they can enjoy them within the next 10 years versus the next 30 or 40. Members of council, any questions or comments further to this report? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you, guys. We'll now move on to item 12, Councillor Steele. Oh, you got, that's for the conflict, Bill?
Yeah, just 12 or 17?
12.
Sorry, 17 is fine. Bear with me here. Going back to the no, I actually was, Counselor, no, I was actually at the appropriate spot at page 187 on the last report, so I had to scroll way back to page 25 to get to this one. So, no, I knew where I was going, Counselor.
It's actually page 199.
Started on 187, goes to 199. It's a big file. Thanks. Thanks, Chris. So, with regards to item 12, Your Worship, I'll move that Carol Madden, Poppy Chairman, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 56, re-request for proclamation of annual Poppy campaign October the 25th, 2013 to November 11th, 2013. That October 25th to November 11th, 2013 be proclaimed as Poppy Week in the City of Port Colborne in accordance with the request received from Carol Maiden, Poppy Chairman, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 56, Port Colborne, and I bring that forward for Councillor Butter's conflict. Thank you.
And I believe that campaign is kicking off this week, so for all you folks that are waiting to get your poppies, it's kicking off this week, Market Square all over the city, so by all means get your poppy. So with that, recognizing the conflict, we have a seconder to that motion, please. Councillor Danch, questions or comments further? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. Item 17, Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 17, Rosemary Sadler, Ontario Black History Society, regarding Harriet Tubman commemoration, Underground Railroad. Request to name Highway 406 in honor of Harriet Tubman. Council direction required is the recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor, do you want to speak on that? Go ahead.
Sure. I did read this. I thought it was pretty interesting stuff. I had no idea that there was such a connection to Niagara, really. I didn't know that. So I would think it would be a good thing to support, and I would put that forward that we do support the commemoration of Harriet Tubman for the Highway 406.
Thank you. we have a seconder to that? Councillor Doucette, are there any questions or comments to that? Mr. Howe, go ahead. Go ahead, say it.
I'm just wondering, Your Worship, I know 406 is north and south. 405 is east and west, and the 405 might be even more appropriate from Niagara Falls to St. Catharines.
405 or the 420?
4. Which one is Lewiston?
405.
405. That road.
Yeah.
That would tie right into the U.S. border. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, for getting involved. This is not my place to talk in council or participate, but
absolutely, go ahead.
That connects directly with President Obama and the United States and has some real relevance, that Underground Railroad from New York State into St. Catharines. And the 405 might be more important, a greater recognition than the 406.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butters? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Well, then maybe we should contact Ms. Sadler and ask her if that's something that she would want to look at instead of the 406.
Okay,
Maybe she's looking at 406 as a more important or major thoroughfare, but I do get your point of.
So why don't we make that motion,
Yeah,
Councillor,
we'll
that we get back to her and actually
ask her if the 405
recommend that to her and see what her response is?
Absolutely.
Is that fine?
That's great.
Okay, the seconder, that's fine? Okay, any questions or comments to that? Thank you, Bob. Nice having a historian next to me.
Sorry, I got involved here.
No, it's appropriate. Supporting what? No, just the consideration of the 405. Okay, Councillor, just to be clear, the clerk brings up a good point. So you're saying not to support the 406, simply to get back to, so, why don't we refer it back to her? Okay, through correspondence, stating that we think it would be more appropriate if it was a 405 because of, and see what her response is. Okay, that's fine. Yvonne, you're as a seconder, that's fine. Okay, questions or comments? Councillor Kenny, go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. But we should say also, if that's not possible, if she's not in favor of that, then we would support this.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come back again. Right? This is our suggestion because it's more appropriate because of the east-west length.
Okay, that's fine. You want to add that to it, Barb? Okay, so I would recommend we don't add it in the correspondence, but we do have it as part of the recommendation, so it doesn't come back to council. Okay, is that fine? And that would come out of your office, Ashley, that you can get back to them and say that we thought 405 would be more appropriate, and we'll leave it at that. But if she says no, then it doesn't have to come back to council, the 406. Good. Further questions or comments to that? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you, and thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Bob. You're just not a pretty face, are you? Members of council, that is it for the items requiring separate discussion. So I'm going to ask if there's any notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion this evening? I'm looking at you, Beeks. I thought you had, okay, that's fine. I don't want you to throw anything at me. No notices of motion. Members of council, if I can have a motion to adjourn this portion of this evening's agenda. I have Councillor Bodner, Councillor Doucette. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. We will now shuffle on to our regular meeting of council. Madam Clerk, any addendum items? Chris, can we get that microphone checked? It's making these funny noises. With no addendum items, can I have a motion to confirm the agenda, please? Councillor Steele, Councillor Kenny, all those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Disclosures of interest. Councillor Butters.
Yes, with item number 12, as I'm a member of the Branch 56 Royal Canadian Legion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further disclosures? With none, I do have minutes. I'll do them in block if you don't mind. 3 sets. We have the minutes of the 33rd meeting special of council, dated September 23rd, 2013. The minutes of the 34th meeting regular of council, dated September 23rd, 2013. And the minutes of the 35th meeting special of council, dated September 30th, 2013. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Steele.
Item 12 for the conflict.
Thank you. Councillor Butters.
I'm going to lift number 6 for a recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Further items, members? On the remainder of the items, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, seconder. Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you. We'll go now to item number 6. Councillor Butters.
Hereto, as Appendix A, rezoning the land from the existing EI extractive industrial zone to the EI-373-H concrete product manufacturing holding. And the amended portion is that the required amended site plan agreement needed to lift the holding be reviewed and approved by City Council, and that the neighboring properties be notified and engaged in the process.
Public meeting would be a part of that process.
In the process of public meetings?
A public meeting would be part of this, the
Okay.
process of establishing a site plan.
Okay. Public meetings would be a part of site plan control process?
Establishing a site plan.
Establishing, okay. Site plan control. And then that, I guess, would be number 2. Then number 3, that the city clerk is hereby authorized and directed to proceed with the giving of notice of passing of the bylaws in accordance with the Planning Act. And then number 4 would be that pursuant to the provisions of Section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice of public meetings be required. Would that still be in there then? Under that? Okay.
You good? Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Butters. So I have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Danch. I'm going to ask the clerk to ask for the recorded vote. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In accordance with Section 6.27 of the procedural bylaw, I'm going to read out the names of each member of council that is present this evening. Upon hearing your name, please indicate either yes or no to the motion on the floor. Mayor Badaway?
Yes.
Councillor Bodner?
Yes.
Councillor Butters?
Yes.
Councillor Danch?
Yes.
Councillor Desmarais?
Yes.
Councillor Doucette?
Yes.
Councillor Kenny?
Yes.
Councillor Steele?
Yes.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I once again do want to thank council. That motion was declared unanimous, and I think that sends a strong message to the proponent. Members of council will now move on to the number 12. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Your Worship. Carol Madden, Poppy Chairman, Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 56, request for proclamation of annual Poppy campaign, October 25th, 2013 to November 11th, 2013. I bring this forward for Councillor Butters' conflict.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I have 3 proclamations, members of council, and I will be looking for a mover and seconder for each one. The first being that whereas philanthropic now Chris Wilson's in my head now. The good deed doers, yeah. Whereas philanthropy involves a generosity of spirit, a desire to help, and a firm belief that you can make a difference in your community regardless of how much or how little you have to give. And whereas national you know, it always happens. Once you get it in your head, you can't get it out. National Philanthropy Day on November 15th recognizes and celebrates the profound impact that philanthropy and those people active in the philanthropic community have made to our lives, our communities, and our world. And whereas the Niagara Community Foundation has taken this one-day celebration and extended it to a month of activities and events connected to philanthropic initiatives throughout November, starting November 1st, and with Random Acts of Kindness Day. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, proclaim November as Philanthropy Month here in the city of Port Colborne, and I encourage citizens to participate in the various events throughout the community and to help all achieve their philanthropic dreams, big and small, that celebrate the spirit of philanthropy. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Doucette. All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thanks, Chris. The second proclamation, members of council, is that whereas the generation of solid waste and the needless waste of water and energy resources are recognized as global environmental problems, and whereas provincial governments have an important role to play in promoting waste reduction, reuse, recycling, composting, and other conservation measures, and whereas communities, businesses, and organizations across this country of Canada have committed to working together to raise awareness of these issues during Waste Reduction Week here in Canada. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, proclaim the week of October 21st to October 27th, 2013, as Waste Reduction Week here in the city of Port Colborne. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Desmarais, all those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Don't be shy, guys. The last one is that I, Mayor Vincent Badaway, do hereby proclaim October 25th, 2013 to November 11th, 2013 as Poppy Week here in the city of Port Colborne in honor of the men and women from Port Colborne who gave their lives during the two world wars, the Korean War and the Afghanistan War. Further, that the citizens of the city of Port Colborne are encouraged to participate in Remembrance Day services to be held at H.H. Knoll Park on Monday, November 11th, 2013 at 10:45 a.m. And I'd like to add to that as well the cenotaph at Cedar Bay. I know Barb attends on my behalf and Ron attend on our behalf every November 11th. But there as well as the H.H. Knoll Lakeview Park cenotaph for the Remembrance Day ceremonies and services. So with that, members, if I can have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Bodner, Councillor Kenny, questions or comments to that recommendation? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Thank you, members. We'll now move on to the minutes of boards, commissions, and agencies. I do have 5 sets of minutes, and if I can do them in block, if you don't mind. Unless you want them separated? No? Thanks, B. First off is the minutes of the Port Colborne Historical Marine Museum Board of Management meeting of July 16, 2013. The second being the minutes of the Seniors Advisory Council meeting of June 20th, 2013. The third being the Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee meeting of July 24th, 2013. The fourth being the Canal Days Advisory Committee meeting of July 17th, 2013. And lastly, the minutes of the Long-Term Master Plan meeting of June 19th, 2013. I have Fire Chief written beside this, so I'm sure it's coming from him. He's not here, so I don't think he's got any comments on it. So with that, members, I need a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Desmarais, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That would be carried. That would be very philanthropic of you all. That's the name, or that's the word of the day, maybe the week. If I can say it, yeah. Spell it. Spell it, yeah. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? With no notices of motion, Madam Clerk, the introduction of the bylaws, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 6004-11013 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2871-5093 being a bylaw to adopt a policy respecting a municipal alcohol management policy. Bylaw 6005-11113 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 5256-1109 being a bylaw to prohibit and regulate public nuisances within the city of Port Colborne. Bylaw 6006-11213 being a bylaw to establish a schedule of rates and fees for the Valley Health and Wellness Center, Roselawn Center, Nickel Beach, and municipal parks and playing fields and marina. Bylaw 6007-11313 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 11509781 respecting lands legally known as Concession 2, Part Lot 23, and Part Lot 24, former Township of Humberston in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 1937 Rainy Road. bylaw 6008-11413, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement with Oscom Steel Fabricators Limited over Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3 on Plan 59R 14939, and finally bylaw 6009-11513, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Rankin Construction, Inc. regarding tender 2013-18A supply and place asphalt for parking lot, and tender 2013-18B supply, place, and grade granular for a parking lot, Valley Health and Wellness Center.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Danch, Councillor Steele. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Confirmatory bylaw, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 6010-11613, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its special and regular meetings of October 15, 2013.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Steele, Councillor Desmarais. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. I'm now going to entertain a motion to go into closed session to deal with 3 items. The minutes of the closed session portion of the September 23rd, 2013 regular and September 30th, 2013 special council meetings. B, the confidential planning and development report number 2013-65 regarding the potential disposition of city-owned land pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392C, a proposed acquisition, pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And C, a verbal report from myself concerning a human resources matter pursuant to Municipal Act 2001, subsection 2392B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and 2392D, labor relations or employee negotiations. Before I ask for a mover and seconder, well, actually, I'll ask for that mover and seconder now, please. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Doucette, questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That will be carried. Before I adjourn, or we go into closed session, I do want to announce the next meeting will be on October 28th, a Monday, 2013, in the chamber here, Committee of the Whole, as well as Council. And then following that, Tuesday, November 12th, once again here in the chamber, Committee of the Whole and Council beginning at 6:30 p.m. So with that, members, we'll now go into closed session. To the public, have a great week. And as always, be kind to the pet population. Ensure your pets are spayed and neutered. With that, we'll go into closed session.